Part 37. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 361. Li Yuan could only say so much, and he didn't know whether Fu Zonghai could understand it. At around 5 o'clock, after sending the two of them off, Zhang Yuling praised him several times. Li Yuan began to have a sense of life. But this time things were really noisy. Those stock investors and Christians are going to scold you to death. She was a little worried. Li Yuan said nonchalantly, as long as the citizens of Qingtian Capital will not lose money, the shareholders of Qingtian Capital will also not lose money. No matter how much it falls, it is impossible for Qingtian Capital to fall below 2 trillion yuan. Performance has nothing to do with it, it's simply that no one will let Qingtian Capital fall below 2 trillion. As for other things, can I control it? I am only responsible for my own users, and the lives of others have nothing to do with me. But it seems that this was not your initial goal. Zhang Yuling talked a lot about Li Yuan with Zhang Yuanqiao, and Zhang Yuanqiao gave her a lot of inspiration. Li Yuan spread his hands and said, "No money. No power. Being able to do this is already pretty good. I don't dare to think about anything else for the time being. Walk around and practice shooting with me. I think I've made a lot of progress. Actually, your marksmanship is already very good. The most important thing about using a gun is not the accuracy." "What is that?" "Speed. Draw the gun, load it, and shoot. The scenarios where you can use it are basically close quarters. If you don't have speed, you won't be able to take advantage. I think everything else is okay, but the shooting speed is not very fast, and the loading is not very fast either." That day, the entire internet was scolding Li Yuan. The investors who lost money wanted to eat Li Yuan's flesh and blood alive. There are even people on the internet who are instigating that they want to blow up the industries under the name of Qingtian Group. For example, they went to Bixin's office building, went to Bixin Mall to place orders and return goods, and boycotted the anchors of Jushan Media. Some people even revealed that Li Yuan opened a large supermarket in his hometown and wanted to block the door of the supermarket. Keep supermarkets open. There are many people who are confused, and there are also many people who respond to similar statements. But in the end, we can only make trouble online, and everything is normal in reality. Li Yuan even took the time to go to the hospital to see Songju. This second daughter gradually opened up and was very cute. It's a pity that I wasn't in Zhangzhou, because Chen Ji also gave birth to a daughter there a few days ago. If you add Zhou Ranran's unborn one, there are already 7 children. Early the next morning, Li Yuan just woke up and went to the corridor and balcony in his pajamas to take a look outside. It's almost April and it's still snowing. After one night, the ground was completely white, and there were even snowflakes floating in the sky. At some point, Zhang Yuling came to the corridor window wrapped in pajamas and said softly, "Isn't the snow scene on the mountain particularly beautiful?" Li Yuan nodded. "It feels like I was a kid, as if I've gone back more than 10 years ago." "How was the food?" "Very homely." "Well, I have also learned a few home-cooked dishes recently. When we go to the mountains later, can I cook them for you?" "Okay." After having breakfast at home, Li Yuan arranged for a car to drive to where Qin Si was. But Qin Si is definitely not here today. Zhang Yuling has cleared the venue in advance. No matter who she wants to occupy any space, she has to let it go. Li Yuan didn't think there was anything wrong. There were rules and it was good for everyone. Although it was a little cold at the door, it was much more convenient for Li Yuan to take Zhang Shu to build a snowman. Over in the kitchen, Zhang Yuling made herself look miserable because she didn't know how to use the earthen stove. But the family of 3 had a great time. As for Li Jingcheng, I'm leaving it to look after the house. Anyway, with Zhou Wan and Li Wanhe here, the little guy can't be hungry. At night, After putting Jiangshu to sleep, the two sat next to the brazier, eating melon seeds and chatting. After staying here for a day, I almost wanted to change my identity with someone else. Zhang Yuling felt very comfortable, like a life in a paradise. She understood why Li Yuan came over. They were completely different worlds. Li Yuan said, any lifestyle has its drawbacks. When you are leisurely and comfortable, you need to consider daily necessities, and when you are busy, you need to find where your soul belongs. Why do I feel that you are more comfortable than anyone else? Haha, I didn't tell you that. Then, can you stop? Can't. After spending a night in the mountains, the two of them got up at 10:30 a.m. at Jiangshu's urging. Otherwise I really don't want to get up. However, Jiangshu jumped around on the bed, stepping on their faces from time to time. Li Yuan wanted to hold Jiangshu and sleep for a while, but he couldn't hold it down at all. No matter how much children tell you the rules, no matter how much you coax them, it will be a waste of time. On the way back, Zhang Yuling was a little lazy. She didn't sleep well at all. After all, she didn't fall asleep until late at night. She had released too much and was very tired. Now you realize how annoying children are, right? I won't give you a chance to sleep even if you want. Since having these two little guys, my parents really haven't slept a single day. It's okay, it's okay. From now on, when I'm home, they can have a little more leisure time. I'm afraid not necessarily. If Li Yuan is not at home, he will have 2 or 3 children a year. If he is at home, he will not have 5 or 6 children a year. Zhang Yuling admired Li Wanhe and didn't know how to survive every day. Definitely, I will do all the hard work at home from now on. After returning home, Li Yuan turned on his mobile phone. If you open Bixen, the message will keep ringing for half an hour. Just because he has blocked his perception of the outside world does not mean that what is happening outside does not exist. In fact, this thing is getting bigger and bigger. There was no light at all on Saturday and Sunday, and the arrival of Dark Monday was almost inevitable. The whole world is shocked by Li Yuan's appeal. Not even Buffett can do this. This incident is not good news for China. The size of the stock market has disappeared out of thin air, with several trillions disappearing out of thin air, and more than a dozen trillions may disappear next. It increased for a year and a half, but because of Li Yuan's decision, he went back to the past. And for the whole world, it is an opportunity to understand Li Yuan. Li Yuan used to be famous and was the richest man in the world. But no one imagined that Li Yuan already had such a strong influence. This time it was a real understanding, and after getting to know each other deeply, everyone's eyes lit up. At this time, Li Yuan was like the most special piece on the chessboard, and everyone wanted to win over him. In this way, even if the market is turbulent, no one dares to do anything to Li Yuan, for fear of forcing him to change his camp. Now that he can destroy a financial system with just one sentence, it also proves that he can create a financial system by himself. On March 31st, Black Monday arrived. The Shanghai Stock Exchange fell 6 points that day. Or the result of forced market protection. The trading volume of the two cities that day was only 600 billion. There is no doubt that Qingtian capital has hit its limit. That day, 200 million yuan went in to buy the bottom, and then, on April 1st, Qingtian capital fell to the limit again, and its market value was on the verge of falling below 4 trillion. Li Yuan hasn't started to reduce his holdings yet. Qingtian capital itself is also under great pressure, such as Guo Meng. She has been reducing her holdings like crazy in the past few days, and Li Yuan didn't even notify her. After the sudden black swan, she faced a large number of Christian redemptions. The amount redeemed on Saturdays and Sundays was 1 trillion. The problem was that she couldn't cash out that much. You can only press and drag it back. Whether it is a subscription or a redemption, The contract will be officially fulfilled only after the company has reviewed and confirmed it. In the case of such a large-scale redemption, it can be delayed for a day or two. Last Friday, Guo Meng made a prompt decision and withdrew 400 billion in funds, 160 billion on Monday, and 240 billion on Tuesday. At present, there are still 700 billion left to come out. After all, this kind of retreat will inevitably push the nuclear button, and the scale of 1.7 trillion will drop very quickly. Li Yuan's attitude is still very firm so far, and Guo Meng feels that he should be unemployed. The staff of Qingtian Capital are now in panic. It was okay for those who had the right to receive dividends before. After receiving the money, they can distribute between 700,000 and more than 2 million yuan, so there is basically no pressure. However, there are still many people who have missed out on the right to receive dividends and can only receive wages. Wages were high last year, with per capita wages reaching over 1 million and approaching 2 million. But what about this year? There is no hope at all. Some people have begun to think of a way out in private. After all, when there is benefit, hello to me and everyone. When there is no benefit, who cares who you are? Qingtian Capital has no performance, can it still operate at a loss? After the market closed, Guo Meng found Meng Jiangguo and found that Meng Jiangguo was also very depressed. A great situation was destroyed by my boss in the blink of an eye. Qingtian Capital can obviously become the strongest capital in the country. After all, there are only a few domestic capitals with a scale of more than 1 trillion yuan in total. He was happy to be busy again. Now even if he continues to be paid, he doesn't want to stay idle like this and live a life without any goals at all. Manager Guo, what's wrong? The shareholding reduction didn't go smoothly today. Guo Meng, no, it's going well. We can confirm more shares tonight. The market has received a little more funds. It is estimated that another 300 to 400 billion may be released tomorrow. Meng Jiangguo sighed, in that case, Qingtian Capital will be completely finished. Guo Meng nodded. It's really over. From more than 2 trillion to now, once the share is confirmed today, Qingtian Capital's scale will only be over 200 billion tomorrow. From super first class to second class. He dropped directly from first to 50. Have you contacted the boss? Meng Jiangguo asked. Anyway, he didn't get in touch, and Li Yuan didn't reply to his message. Well, the boss replied to me, try to reduce the losses to the people. If there is nothing you can do, use the money on the company's books to cover the losses. The company's books still have more than 100 billion. From this, it can be seen that Li Yuan is determined not to want Qingtian Capital. Well, in this way, with Li Yuan not showing up, A shares were considered stable in mid-April. It is just temporarily stable because there is no big money selling. At this time, the market index was at 2,800 points. Many funds are trying hard to pull off another wave, but they always encounter resistance inexplicably. Obviously, Qingtian Capital's positions have been completely destroyed, leaving only more than 8 billion. On April 18, Qingtian Capital once again issued an announcement that within the next week, 4 funds under the name of Qingtian Capital would be forcibly liquidated. This means that Qingtian Capital has no business left. The brokerage business belongs to Qingtian Group and has nothing to do with Qingtian Capital. The payment business also belongs to Qingtian Group and has nothing to do with Qingtian Capital. And Qingtian Capital still has a market value of $3 trillion. All I can say is that everything is so magical. A bankrupt company can still have such a high market value. Bien Mofu is an ordinary worker who is in his 40s. Originally, working on the construction site, the family lived a pretty good life, and with a little hard work, they could earn hundreds of thousands in income a year. His wife went to the construction site to cook for him, which saved a lot of money. He himself was not the kind of person who spent money. Over time, He also had a house and a car. He thought that this kind of life could continue, but something unexpected happened last year and he didn't have the chance to go out to work for a whole year. In the first half of this year, I looked for several construction sites, but none were hiring. But when his eldest son got married, the woman's family didn't ask for much, just a gift of 60,000 yuan and a down payment. The betrothal gift plus down payment is only 200,000 yuan. After all, it is a house in a small county and not a developed place. But after working together for a long time, there was still a shortfall of 100,000 yuan. If I go out to work this year, last year, or this year, I won't feel so much pressure. What annoys him the most is the overall market situation. If the property market is not doing well, it will only be more difficult for him to go out to work in the future. He is not worried about starving to death. There are still a few acres of land in his hometown. It is not difficult to earn tens of thousands of yuan a year by working hard in his hometown. The difficulty is that the eldest son is getting married and the younger son is going to college soon. He had never had a sense of crisis before. He felt that this society was good. If you work hard, you can make money. If you work hard, you can have enough food and clothing, and enjoy yourself. After the crisis struck, he realized how fragile he was. Why don't we sell our current house and use it as a down payment for the boss? His wife said, our house is old, and it's not worth much if we want to sell it now. Besides, if we don't have a house, where will we live? Go back home. Go back to your hometown? Don't you think it's embarrassing? What will the neighbors say about us? Then sell the car. How much is the car worth? It has been driven for 3 or 4 years. Bien Mofa showed a bitter expression. It seems like, nothing is worth anything. It was obviously very expensive when I bought it. The car costs 160,000 yuan, and the house costs more than 300,000 yuan. The car may not be sold for 50,000 yuan, but the value of the house has increased nominally, but in reality, after paying off the mortgage for so many years, the cost of a house worth more than 300,000 yuan is already close to 600,000 yuan. Is this old, dilapidated house without an elevator worth 600,000 yuan now? A lot of 500,000 yuan is listed in the community, which cannot be sold at all. When the value of the house increased, they didn't even calculate the calculation. Only now did they realize that everything was a liar. It is certainly possible to sell the house at a reduced price, but in the end there will be little money left, and it is difficult to renovate the home. Besides, you won't be able to eat or drink in the future. At this moment, his wife suddenly took out a text message on her mobile phone and said, "Master, look at it, is this a scam message? It says that 220,000 yuan has been credited to my bank card." End of chapter. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 362. Bien Mofa believes that the information you, an old woman, received must be fraudulent information, because she has been deceived a lot in recent years. From being asked to take a photo with your ID card when receiving washing powder, to being used to borrow online loans using your identity information, to winning the first prize in a supermarket lottery, you can buy a piece of gold and jade worth 9,000 yuan for an additional 800 yuan. In fact, the retail cost of that gold and laid jade is only a few dozen yuan or 1 or 200. Of course, the biggest time I was deceived was when I registered something called Alipay. I saw a financial product in it, which had increased by 60 points last year, so I decisively bought it for 80,000 yuan. As a result, I started to lose money as soon as I bought it, and then I wanted to redeem it, but I couldn't. A few days later, the mobile phone card was lost, and from then on the 80,000 yuan was wasted. Time flies, it was already 6 or 7 years ago. But when he saw that the message number sent was 95,599, He immediately lost his composure. I picked up the text message and read it over and over again, and found that it was true. It starts with Qingtian Capital, ends with the account balance, and ends with a note that this text message is from Agricultural Bank of China. How much money do you still have in your Agricultural Bank of China card? There is no money. Didn't you withdraw all of it? There are only a few cents left. Bring the card, let's go to the cash machine and have a look. Why are you bringing a card? If you don't answer, it's the end of the world. The message is from the bank. What are you worried about? Can anything happen if I'm here? Bien Mofu himself is not very smart, but his wife has fallen into a lot of traps over the years. As the saying goes, a long-term illness makes a good doctor, and he, a sparring partner, has already trained his wife. His wife still occasionally takes advantage and suffers losses, but he has never been fooled once. The disadvantage is that this thing cannot compete for the Olympic torchbearer. 10 minutes later, the two of them were squeezed into the ATM machine, which seemed a little cramped. After all, the place was set up for one person. But seeing the balance of a few 120,000 yuan displayed on the screen, the two of them didn't care at all. However, Bien Mofu's cautious character was still not too happy and said, maybe someone else made a mistake. Go to the bank counter and ask. After saying that, the two walked out and walked towards the bank hall. It was only 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There are still many people queuing in the waiting area of the bank. There are 7 or 8 windows, but only one window is occupied. They also wanted to get a number, but the lobby manager said, sorry, there are no numbers today. Please come back tomorrow. Bien Mofu asked, isn't it just 5 o'clock? Yes, there are 4 more numbers ahead. Then why don't you open an extra window? I will give feedback to the leader. Smile. Bien Mofu walked out of the bank lobby angrily and called his son to let him see what was going on. He always felt that the money might have been misplaced. He often read the news on weekdays. If he made a mistake, he had to pay it back. If he accidentally spent it, he might be charged with something. It was originally a normal thing to accept compensation for spending money, but I don't know when it started. Under the publicity of the media, it became a crime. It's obviously just a small thing, but it gradually becomes frightening. When his eldest son came back, he saw the text message and looked shocked. Dad, when did our family buy Qingtian Capital's fund? Bien Mofu was stunned. What fund? It's a kind of financial management. Bien Mofu seemed to understand immediately. I did buy financial management for 80,000 yuan. His wife also came back to her senses. Is it the one I bought 6 years ago? Wasn't it impossible to take it out at the beginning? The compensation was terrible. His son looked at it over and over for a long time, and finally sighed and said, Mom and Dad, if you bought Qingtian Capital, tell me earlier. If you redeem it in advance, it will be more than 220,000, maybe 300,000 more than that. Bien Mofu is not that greedy. Is 220,000 too little? However, he still asked, what is Qingtian Capital? It is the company of the richest man Li Yuan. He has helped 10 million people make money in the past few years. As long as you buy his fund, you have not lost anything so far. Bien Mofu took a breath and gave 10 million people money to spend. What kind of capable person does this have to be? So he asked his son, then why didn't you buy it? His son said with a bitter face, I also have to be rich. I came to you to get money before, but you kept saying that I met a liar. Forget it, our family shouldn't make this money. Of the 220,000, let's take out 100,000 to get you a wife. Other people's girls are easy to talk to, so our family can't afford not to give them this face. He was not too upset about missing the opportunity. He had missed many opportunities in his life. Back then, someone asked him to work as a foreman or contractor at a construction site. He didn't go, he knew he was not the material. Some people did become big bosses, but most of them lost all their wealth, and many even lost their lives. He believes in working hard to make money. But after this incident, he began to pay attention to a person named Li Yuan. Even take the initiative to search for some information. He really doesn't understand, but someone does. Someone will match this flow and list Li Yuan's things clearly. As long as he can understand the words. He didn't believe what his son said. There was really someone who could lead 10 million people to make money. Only after reading it did I realize that the so-called 10 million is just a conservative number. This number may reach 15 million or 20 million. For Bien Mofu, the 220,000 yuan not only saved his family's financial needs, but also gave him reassurance. During this time, he had a lot of doubts about the world. He has earned a lot of money. After more than 20 years, he must have earned more than 2 million. Migrant workers don't have to pay taxes, so they basically get their money back. The family's annual expenses are 30,000 yuan, including favors. The annual tuition and living expenses for the 2 children add up to 30,000 yuan. These are all normal. His family has no particularly large expenses, except for a car and a house. He has been summarizing this time. Where did the money go? He concluded that all the money had been defrauded. I was deceived when I watched a TV commercial, I was defrauded when I went to the supermarket to buy something, and I was defrauded when I went to eat. The fellow villagers were deceived, friends and comrades came to deceive. Even buying a house is a lie. Other people's interest rates have been reduced, but his family's interest rate for buying a house has not been reduced yet. Because they don't know the news, because they don't know how to operate. He didn't even know why there were so many scammers in the world, and why people who wanted to live honestly were afraid to go out and buy things. If his family hadn't been deceived too much, he wouldn't have known the name Li Yuan now. Even if someone mentioned it to him before, he wouldn't be too lazy to remember it. Liars, they are all liars. He knew that it was impossible to eliminate the existence of liars in this world, but there shouldn't be so many of them. He has a Bixen account and was the one who received the supplies. Because real name authentication was required, he felt that the other party must have used his information for loans again. Otherwise, where would he get so many harassing phone calls every day? So he never logged into that Bixen. Log in again and suddenly find that the software is very different. I don't have to watch a few videos to tell you that you are sick and what medicine you should buy. I didn't even watch a video, there was just an advertisement in it. There are no all kinds of copywriting routines, whatever works well. There is also a lot of news here. There is no such thing as dubbing a trivial topic, and there is no unproven rhythm. The comment section is also relatively harmonious, with no extreme fans at all. Even under the official account, there are not all singing songs. And the comment sections of those news videos are also not full of yin and yang. He was tired of watching other platforms, or if they were just like missions, he would get goosebumps all over the place. Or it's like being paid, and there are all kinds of weird things in the comment area. Those capitalists have a dark heart, some officials also have a dark heart. He doesn't know that much, he only knows black and white. He had eaten takeout, and it was hard to imagine that a portion of stir-fried vegetables and a small bowl of rice cost a full 25 yuan. Either the restaurant owner is evil, or the takeout platform is evil. It can't be that he wants to eat a meal at a normal price because he has a bad heart, right? After a few days, he felt refreshed. It turns out that a world without liars is so comfortable. He placed an order and bought some items. He felt that each item was very cost-effective and he felt that the money was well spent. The number of Bixen users is growing steadily. During the Chinese New Year last year, there were a lot of registered users, and the number of daily active users dropped from the peak of more than 40 million to 18 million. But in the past half month, it has basically risen steadily by 500,000 to 600,000 per day and has never dropped again. For Li Yuan, it is both good news and bad news. The good news is that Bitcoin has a promising future. The bad news is that everyone doesn't have much money left. As long as you can endure the scams that exist everywhere on the internet, you won't change your entertainment habits so quickly. And he just happened to start smashing the plate. 3 full weeks and 15 trading days have passed. Qingtian Capital's market value of 3 trillion is still too high. He has no chance at all if he hits it. Anyway, he will not enter the financial market openly within 2 years. Even if the shell of Qingtian Capital is not used, it will not cause him any loss. On the first day of holding reduction, the call auction was hit by the limit. Only 20 million were sold, and the entire market was stagnant. The chips are too concentrated. In order to prevent their funds from being wasted, those big capital companies can only hold on. It doesn't matter to retail investors, even if they bought it with a market value of 5 trillion, they would only lose 40% now and they could get out at any time. And their big funds are useless even if they think of it. When Qingtian Capital is completely delisted, Qingtian Capital will be theirs. As for the money made by Qingtian Capital, wasn't it already separated? What you get is an empty shell. Of course, there may be some left, billions or tens of billions. In this regard, Li Yuan would definitely not lose his money on purpose. Li Yuan will not spend a penny more than what should be left to them. Compared with the trillions they have invested, this amount of money is at best a consolation prize. On April 26, Li Yuan received the resignation document from Meng Jiangguo, and he agreed. And let Guo Meng become the general manager of Qingtian Capital. On April 27, Li Yuan received a call from Guo Meng. After answering the phone, Li Yuan asked, "Mr. Guo, are you here to resign too?" Guo Meng hurriedly said, "How could it be possible? If a loser like me can stay at Qingtian Capital for 1 more year of salary, I will definitely stick around." "Ha ha ha, Mr. Guo is actually very capable, but you haven't discovered it yet. It just so happens that the boss of Lakian Capital is my old lover. Do you want me to introduce you to him? A fund manager will definitely not be able to run away." "Guo Meng, you introduced Mr. Meng." "Yeah, he doesn't have much gas left in the tank, and I can't let him waste it on Qingtian Capital." Guo Meng said with a smile, "Forget it, I don't want to go, just stay at Qingtian Capital. Either Qingtian Capital goes bankrupt and I leave, or I just hang around. I guess there will be a lot of people who will envy my job. You don't have to work, and you still get such a high salary. You really don't want to leave? There will be no dividends this year." "I'm not leaving." "Then why are you calling me?" "You don't need to call me for reporting work. Just contact Mr. Yu for group business. I don't care about anything now." Guo Meng hesitated for a while and said, Can I treat you to a meal? At my own home, there is also, my boyfriend." "Are you getting married?" "Probably, by the end of the year." "I want to thank you, but I also know that it would be troublesome for you to come out, so I won't send you an invitation to the wedding." Li Yuan thought for a while and said, "Okay, let's do it this Sunday. I'll go there with Mr. Yu." "Good." After hanging up the phone, Li Yuan contacted Yu. There were still 3 days until Sunday, and he was going to investigate Guo Meng's boyfriend first. For Guo Meng, there is nothing to worry about. The only problem is her boyfriend. According to the usual practice, he should have refused, but he really admired Guo Meng. Anyway, once we investigate clearly, we can go eat. After contacting Yu, he learned the identity of Guo Meng's boyfriend. Lu Mubai is not Lu from Zhangzhou, but Lu from Beijing. A very good second generation. First, he sent a message to his bodyguards and asked them to investigate. Then he went to Ho Wenbin and others to ask about Lu Muibai. The next day, the information from both sides was compiled into one piece. Lu Muibai is a perfect second-generation model. He is handsome and has taken over a small company worth more than 1 billion in his family. He is not old either, at 32 years old, 2 years older than Guo Meng. Maybe I wanted to contact Qingtian Capital before and chatted with Guo Meng. But now that Qingtian Capital is about to collapse, it is still planning to marry Guo Meng. It is very likely that it is purely because of Guo Meng. Guo Meng does have this capital. He is currently worth more than 70 million. He has a good figure and looks. His abilities have improved very quickly in the past few years, and his conditions are already fulfilled. That Lu Muibai was not as capable as Guo Meng Qiang. At least Guo Meng has managed more than 2 trillion yuan in funds. No matter what she does, or whether there is someone behind her to guide her, it will not affect her reaching that level. Once you have been there, you will leave traces. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a special kind of membrane repair surgery now. Wouldn't it be just trying to cover up the traces of being visited? End of chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 363. After so much information has been verified, it is basically impossible for Lu Muibai to have any problems. For Li Yuan, this meal is completely okay. So he picked a gift from home and prepared to take it there. And I can also take a look at Chen Ji by then, as she has been away from Zhangzhou for almost 4 months, so that she won't feel psychologically uncomfortable. Normally, it might not be a big deal, but having just given birth to a baby recently, I must be a little more fragile. On Sunday morning, he got up at around 7 o'clock. As the temperature warmed up, his symptoms of bed laziness were relieved a lot. After having some breakfast, I told my family and took the bus directly to Zhangzhou around 8 o'clock. At present, Qingtian Group is still relatively busy, and Qingtian Capital will soon become a thing of the past. Employees must either voluntarily resign, take compensation, and the company repurchase their dividend rights, and then find other companies to join. Or just wait for the company to go bankrupt. Many people are willing to wait for bankruptcy. After all, their wages are not deducted, and they are happy to dawdle. They don't even have to clock into work. Except for Guo Meng, the general manager, many people are on vacation in disguise. They also know that the consequence of failing is that no company will want them in the future. When Qingtian Capital collapses, although they can get another 3 to 5 million, they have also gambled the rest of their lives. It's just that many people really don't have the courage. Qingtian Capital has more than 300 people, and only 100 people have resigned voluntarily. It was Meng Jiangguo who led his team to Laikian Capital. Laikian Capital is now so-so and still has a scale of tens of billions. When Yuxian survived the stock market crash at almost the minimum cost, after all, he had hinted in advance. Now is the struggling stage. Almost all the market is dead. Big funds are almost without exception. They are all locked up. The overall operation is quite difficult. Li Yuandu feels that now is the best era, and he only needs to guide retail investors to make market trends. It's just that he has no idea about the small market now, and he doesn't want to be caught in the pigtails. After arriving in Zhangzhou, he immediately went to see Chen Ji at home, chatted with her for a while, and also took a look at his daughter Chen Dai. This name was given by Chen Ji, and its meaning is self-evident. It shows that Chen Ji is still a little unwilling in her heart. After staying with Chen Ji for more than an hour, without talking about too many serious topics, the time was up. After talking to Chen Ji, he came downstairs, picked up Yu, and rushed towards Guo Meng's home. Guo Meng's current new house was bought by himself, costing more than 8 million. It was both the first time for Yu and Li Yuan to go there, and they had only heard about it before. Yu is under great psychological pressure because there are only 4 people today. Li Yuan usually attends any meetings, and someone else does the security, so he doesn't need to worry too much. But now, even if there was a 1 in a billion chance of something going wrong, he still had to be on guard. About 20 minutes later, the 2 of them arrived at the downstairs of Guo Meng's community. The 2 guards got out of the car, communicated with Guo Meng first, and then waited quietly. Guo Meng and Lu Mubai stood at the door, letting the 2 bodyguards inspect them inside. Li Yuan, who was sitting in the car, saw Yu was extremely nervous and said, "Mr. Yu, we still have to give Guo Meng enough trust. Don't be too nervous." Yu nodded and said, "What the boss said is true, but as a subordinate, I won't think about those things. Even if the boss sees my wife and children, I will still guard against them. Haha, it's not that exaggerated. I'll set up a table at home in 2 days and invite your family to have a meal alone. Do you want to know when it's convenient for you to live there?" Yu, huh? It must be convenient for me at home anytime. Isn't your child in school? Going to school is not as important as meeting the boss. I'm not saying that. With the IQs of my 2 children, they can't expect to be very successful in their lives. A meal with the boss will be enough for the 2 of them for the rest of their lives. Yu never knew how to write the word embarrassment, so he knelt and licked Li Yuan from all angles. As long as it's a topic other than work, he has a lot of room to play. If there were other people present, they would probably feel disgusted. What Yu said was really shameless. But Li Yuan sounded particularly comfortable, which meant that Yu could have this effect, but others couldn't. Almost half an hour later, the bodyguard came down. Li Yuan got out of the car with Yu and took the elevator upstairs. When he saw Lu Mubai at the door, Li Yuan was a little jealous of this guy's appearance, which was comparable to his peak years. Due to work in the past few years, my skin has deteriorated a lot, even though I am still 2 days away from turning 23. Rounding up, he is already 25. Rounding it off again, it's already 30. Rounding it off again, he is already over 50 years old. Rounding it off again. Lu Mubai looked very reserved when he saw Li Yuan. After greeting each other, they entered the room. After sitting down, Yu's eyes were fixed on Lu Mubai. Whenever he made the slightest move, Yu would immediately rush forward. In terms of status and industry scale, Lu Mubai can only be regarded as a small role. Moreover, he did not start a business, he just inherited a small part of the family business. The Lu family in Beijing is still very powerful. The assets under its control exceed 50 billion, mostly in the real industry. This number is more valuable than the 200 billion in the financial industry. Guo Meng specially invited his aunt to cook in the kitchen, and the 4 of them sat on the sofa and chatted. Most of it is just gossip, and if you want to talk about something serious, you can't find anything. The 2 sides are not on the same level. It was Guo Meng who cared more about it. He was recalling his first interview with Qingtian Capital throughout the whole process. It's like saying goodbye to the past few years. Yu knew better than anyone else that Guo Meng had always liked Li Yuan all these years. Nominally, he missed the old days, but he just missed the time working with Li Yuan. Otherwise she wouldn't have found a boyfriend, she was about to get married, and she wanted to treat Li Yuan to a meal. Isn't it because I haven't completely let go yet? I couldn't let go of Li Yuan, but I had to respect reality. Li Yuan also listened carefully and cooperated with Guo Meng to remember the past. After chatting for a while, Li Yuan turned to Lu Mubai and asked, "Mr. Lu, how did you and Mr. Guo meet? There are many people pursuing Mr. Guo in our company." There was one named Yao Yingsong before. I have been asked to connect with him several times in private, but I have not agreed. You. Guo Meng. Lu Mubai said with some embarrassment, it's because I'm thick-skinned. After meeting Meng Meng once, I couldn't forget her and kept stalking her to get her to date me. Thank you Mr. Li for not introducing anyone else at the beginning, otherwise nothing would have happened to me. Haha, that Yao Yingsong is far worse than you. I just think that guy is not worthy of Mr. Guo, and he doesn't know himself yet. If he is half as good as Mr. Lu, I would not hesitate to match him. Lu Mubai said humbly, you are so grateful, but you also gave me a chance, otherwise I wouldn't be worthy of her. It is true that Mr. Guo has a good figure and good temperament. In terms of personal ability alone, there are few girls in the country who can be better than her. After getting along with Mr. Guo over the years, I have increasingly discovered how dazzling her body is. When I first heard that she had a boyfriend, I regretted it so much. Haha, but these are all things for later, after all, I am already married. Li Yuan said a lot of words inexplicably, which confused Yu next to him. What does my boss mean? This young couple is getting married soon, and they invite you over for a meal. What are you talking about? Guo Meng on the side was also completely stunned. Why didn't Li Yuan say this earlier? The atmosphere became weird because Li Yuan made such an abrupt statement after chatting with Lu Mubai. There was only one person present who was normal, and that was Lu Mubai. Li Yuan's words clearly gave him the attributes of a Tauran. Regardless of whether it was present or not, at least the Tauran atmosphere existed. He didn't seem to hear it, and said with a smile, Mr. Li said that being able to catch up with Meng Meng is the greatest luck in my life. Li Yuan nodded and said, in this case, I will be relieved to leave Mr. Guo in your hands. It can be regarded as an explanation for her life. Guo Meng clenched her hands. She was completely confused now and had no idea what Li Yuan was talking about. Lu Mubai said, don't worry, Mr. Li, I will definitely take good care of Meng Meng. While talking, the food was served. Li Yuan stood up and took several people to sit in front of the dining table, as if he was the master here. No one had any objections. Just when Guo Meng was about to sit down, Li Yuan took her hand and said with a smile, Mr. Guo, sit next to me. We can talk a few more words. After all, we will get married in the future. This is a chance for us to get close, but it's gone. Guo Meng was stunned. Forget it about the inexplicable words Li Yuan said just now. No matter how impulsive she was, she knew she would never regret it, but now. She looked at Lu Mubai. This guy, who was not angry just now, could be said to have a strong personality. After all, he knew that Li Yuan's identity was extraordinary. But aren't you angry now? She just wanted to treat Li Yuan to a meal and say goodbye to the past completely, but she never thought of doing anything messy. Seeing that Lu Mubai was silent, Guo Meng said, Boss, I'd better sit with my husband. Li Yuan did not agree, and forcibly pulled Guo Meng to his left side, and said with a smile, aren't husbands and bosses the same? They are both old, and I like to be closer. Mr. You accompany Mr. Lu and let's have a nice drink later. Yu quickly agreed. Anyway, according to his purpose, even if Li Yuan is committing a crime, he can only help Li Yuan without hesitation. Guo Meng looked at Lu Mubai with a look that was pleading. Lu Mubai's words were most effective at this time, because she had no spine. But Lu Mubai not only didn't stand up, but instead said, Meng Meng, there are just two guests. Let's take care of one each. It's right for you to get closer to Mr. Li. Guo Meng was so angry that he wanted to throw the table. I have never seen a boyfriend with this kind of Tauran attribute. No matter how powerful Li Yuan is, can he make you give up your principles? Today's Li Yuan is also a subversion for Guo Meng. Some of the words she said on the sofa made Guo Meng a little confused, but the movements she made when she came to the dining table completely subverted her sense of Li Yuan deep in her heart. The change happened so quickly because Li Yuan's behavior was a little too outrageous. Yu took out a bottle of wine, opened it and started pouring it. They brought it upon themselves. Just as Lu Mubai was about to stand up, Yu held his shoulders and said, "Mr. Lu, there is no need to get up, we are not outsiders." Yu put one hand on Lu Mubai's shoulder, and with the other hand, he brought the poured food along the edge of the table to Li Yuan. Li Yuan brought 2 glasses and handed one to Guo Meng. Then the 4 of them toasted together. After finishing the drink, Li Yuan quickly put an arm on Guo Meng's shoulder and said, "I rarely drink, so I have given you enough face today. I also know that after today, Mr. Guo will have nothing to do with me. Yes, but Mr. Lu, I have one last request, let Mr. Guo accompany me for a glass of wine, you won't refuse, right?" Lu Mubai put his hand down and said with an apologetic smile, "No, no, this is what it should be." But Guo Meng said, "I haven't agreed yet." After saying that, she pushed Li Yuan's hand away and said, "Boss, that's it for today. I admit that I liked you before, for a long time. But today, you went too far." She stood up and prepared to leave her seat. She was originally very close to Li Yuan, but due to the seating arrangement, most of Li Yuan's body was blocked by her. The moment she stood up, Li Yuan's entire body was exposed. Lu Mubai didn't know when he lowered his hand and raised it again. A miniature pistol appeared in his hand. A bang sounded in Guo Meng's ears, and for a moment she felt like she was deaf. The next second, blood splattered everywhere. In her sight, it was like an old-fashioned black and white movie clip. She only felt Li Yuan pulling her body, and then she was stunned. She saw Lu Mubai covered in blood, and Yu pressed him to the ground like crazy, holding his neck tightly. Then, she felt pain coming from her body, heartbreaking pain. She couldn't hear anything. I looked back at Li Yuan and saw that Li Yuan was talking and roaring. When the door opened, she couldn't help but scream in pain, but she felt like a mute. The next second, she was picked up by Li Yuan and walked outside. She felt her strength getting weaker and weaker, and the pain became less and less severe. Before the blood on Yu's face was wiped dry, he saw Li Yuan sitting on the bench in the corridor at the door of the hospital's operating room. He was so ashamed that he came to Li Yuan and said, "Boss, I was careless." Li Yuan's face was calm, "It's okay. It happened suddenly. It's pretty good to be able to do that." Li Yuan had a lot to say. He did not say that he only found out the news through the mini headset halfway through. Because the entire living room and kitchen are all equipped with surveillance cameras. Halfway through the conversation, the bodyguard sent him news that something was wrong with Lu Mubai. But there was a lack of evidence, and Lu Mubai's little actions were so hidden that even a few surveillance cameras with almost no blind spots could not detect anything. Everything is just doubt. To put it bluntly, he forced Guo Meng to sit next to him and pulled him so close to block his gun. Even if he has a body armor on him, even if Lu Mubai's miniature pistol is not very powerful. There were only 2 seconds between friends and foes. In the 2 seconds before Lu Mubai took out his gun, there was no obvious abnormality in the footage monitored by the bodyguards. At most, it was a small movement that was reasonable but inappropriate. If Guo Meng doesn't get up, maybe Lu Mubai will endure it forever. Now Li Yuan deeply understood what Zhang Yuling said, accuracy is not so important, speed can determine the outcome. Lu Mubai was very fast, and so was he. But no one took the bullet for Lu Mubai. End of chapter. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 364. Before something happens, there are countless reasons to think that the other party is fine. After something happens, there can also be countless reasons to determine that there is something wrong with the other party. For example, Lu Muebai is not worthy of being a licking dog for Guo Meng. Even if Guo Meng is indeed excellent, Lu Muebai's background can easily find a second Guo Meng. Guo Meng is an ordinary person. Apart from his job at Qingtian Capital, everything else is not worth mentioning in Lu Muebai's eyes. Inside the hospital, two people were rescuing people. One is Lu Muebai and the other is Guo Meng. The message is temporarily blocked, but it may not be possible to block it. After all, many people saw the scene of driving to the hospital covered in blood, and there was no time to blockade the situation at that time. The undercurrent was already surging half an hour ago. The news began to ferment. Tang Jianjun trembled all over when he heard that Li Yuan had been shot. They have done a very good job. Basically everyone around Li Yuan will investigate. In order to prevent anyone from seizing the opportunity to threaten Li Yuan, even Li Yuan's little lovers have all been sent to protect him. The intensity is unprecedented. In addition to the direct protection personnel, there is also a logistics team of more than 50 people behind. Lu Muebai, they investigated back and forth many times, but there was no problem. That is to say, the bodyguard is cautious and feels that some of Lu Muebai's small actions may pose safety risks. That's just a possibility. With the identity of Lu Muebai behind him, there is some room for error. If there is no room for error, Li Yuan will never see anyone again in the future. Who can't scratch an itch anymore? In the 2 seconds before Lu Muebai drew his gun, no one thought it was a big problem. Lu Muebai was wearing only a watch, a mobile phone in his pocket, and nothing else. Li Yuan received a call from the God of Wealth and asked about the situation. The guesses of both sides are very consistent. The enemy cannot come from within. Because Li Yuan was killed internally, there was no benefit, and it was even more impossible to get rid of the trapped funds. Those big institutions are now dreaming of letting Li Yuan step up and take charge of the situation again, or at least bring the situation up. Qingtian Capital alone involves more than 2 trillion yuan in funds, and other funds have even more. Not to mention wanting to kill Li Yuan. If they knew someone was going to cause trouble for Li Yuan, they would dare to block the gun for Li Yuan. The Lu family has begun to take control. Fortunately, nothing happened to you this time. Li Yuan said, the price paid by the other party is not small. Is he using his big trump card this time? Lu Muebai is not a small character, let alone the Lu family behind him. I can be regarded as a bait, and for my merits, you have to do the math, right? The God of Wealth was choked for words. He didn't expect that Li Yuan would think of this. Indeed, Lu Muebai's secret was very deep. If Li Yuan hadn't brought it out, the danger would have become greater and greater as Lu Muebai became stronger and stronger. The identity of the leader of the Lu family is even more outrageous. He has the right to speak in all the major chambers of commerce in the country. If they continue to be hidden, the harm will be unprecedented. Of course, if the assassination is really successful, then for the West, the loss of the Lu family's chess piece will be completely worth it. Who knows how far Li Yuan will grow in the future? The God of Wealth did not reply, and Li Yuan continued, the cause of this matter is that the KDI fund grabbed about $300 billion from Wall Street and exposed my identity. Otherwise, I would have been able to do it quietly and make a lot of money. It won't be smaller than it is now. You have taken all the benefits of cause and effect, so you can't let me suffer alone, right? Finally, the God of Wealth said, what do you want? The person who takes the bullet for me is my confidant, my confidant. That's all you say. Bank settlement license, foreign exchange access. Li Yuan's current system lacks a bank. As long as there are banks, a closed loop can be formed. And the bank he wants is not the kind that operates purely domestically. He will obtain a banking license abroad and then apply to enter the country. Not only are foreign banks subject to extremely strict review when entering the country, but now they are not granted approval at all. There are also many rules, and the relevant foreign exchange controls are very strict. And if he requires a foreign exchange interface, there will be a lot of room for operation. Settling in? Do you have that much size? $300 billion should be enough, right? I only heard a deep breath from the other side of the phone. You really do? I won't lie, I have nothing to hide from you these years. Then I'll think about it and give you an answer after this matter is over. Yeah. You might as well say I'm rescuing him first, someone will jump out. You're not afraid of a shares falling, I'm afraid. The god of wealth did not want to adopt Li Yuan's opinion. He was planning to immediately arrange for someone to announce the news that Li Yuan was okay to stabilize people's hearts. Li Yuan said, "Old man, these rotten things should have been replaced a long time ago. So far, I have never cheated any of my own people." There was silence for 2 full minutes. "Did you call home?" "No." "Then do as you say." Li Yuan called you over. "Give me your cell phone. Then stay in the hospital for the next few days and don't go downstairs. Someone will bring you food." Yu's face tightened, but he quickly handed the phone to Li Yuan. Recalling the scenes that happened before, he had a deeper understanding of Li Yuan. Li Yuan is so cruel. He wore a bulletproof vest and pulled Guo Meng to block bullets for him. Of course, he is also really good to his employees. News of Li Yuan's accident spread. Gunshot wounds, covered in blood, and the hospital is on lockdown. After these keywords appear, it goes without saying that someone will naturally figure out the plot. The mainstream view is that Li Yuan is being resuscitated after being injured. Conspiracy theorists believe that Li Yuan is dead. They are just trying to cover up the public and do not want to announce it so soon. Both Zhang Yuling in Qinghe and Chen Ji in Zhangzhou saw the news on the internet. They tried to call Li Yuan, but couldn't get through at all. I also called Yu, but couldn't get through either. The company can get through, but they don't know what's going on. Chen Ji was silent on the sofa. Cao Yuan was very panicked. "Sister Chen, he will be fine, right?" Chen Ji didn't respond. Because things will not change according to her will. Xu Yanlin, who was still in class, heard the news. Even though the school did not allow her to come and go at will, she still ran out at the risk and came to where Li Yuan lived. When she opened the door to the room, she found that there was no one inside. Finally came to the next door, with Chen Ji and the others. When Yuxian asked Meng Jiangguo, and the answer he got was that all the people in Qingtian group could not be contacted now. As more and more evidence appeared on the internet, especially Guo Meng's house, there were large-scale inspection personnel entering and exiting, the entire community was blocked, and all surveillance was blocked, and things intensified. Today is Sunday, and Wen Yuxian did not go to the company. In addition, she is also busy with graduation. Zhangzhou University will also give her a degree certificate, but she will have to participate in the final graduation defense. Put down the paper, stand in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, and stare into the distance. She has known Li Yuan for almost 4 years, and she has gradually recognized herself from a proud girl. Playing with millions and tens of millions of funds, she is fully capable of thinking. But after reaching tens of billions, she couldn't control it anymore, because every U-turn of funds was extremely complicated. Li Yuan taught her a lot of things, and he taught her through words and deeds every time. She is barely a qualified fund manager now, but she didn't expect Li Yuan to leave so soon. She also wants to show off to Li Yuan after becoming $1 trillion fund manager. That guy still wants to book a room. Actually, it's not impossible. It's just a meal. Why do you have to go? After Zhou Wan learned the news, she was stunned on the spot and wanted to cry, but found that she had no tears. Li Wanhe even ran home like crazy. Although he dislikes the son no matter how much he dislikes him on weekdays, it is all based on Li Yuan's affectionate nature. Essentially, they valued their only son more than their own lives. Although I would say a few words to Li Yuan on weekdays when nothing happened, in fact I didn't know how happy I was. Zhang Yuling took the child and sat next to the sofa with Zhou Wan. Even Zhang Shu, who was usually very boisterous, felt at a loss in this kind of atmosphere at home. Li Wanhe drove out a car in the garage and said hurriedly, "Come on, let's go to Zhangzhou." Zhou Wan stood up from the sofa, her legs feeling a little weak. Her eyes were empty, and her face had turned pale in just a few moments from when she got the news to now. Zhang Yuling said calmly, "Mom and Dad, you go to Zhangzhou first. I will go find you after I finish handling the family affairs." Zhou Wan seemed to have lost her mind and didn't hear it at all. Li Wanhe asked, "Bring Zhang Shu to us, you can't do it alone." "It's okay. I'll ask Ran Ran to take her to me later. I'll be there soon. Don't be in a hurry when you go to the hospital. Ask about the situation first. Don't be impulsive. Wait for me to get there." "Okay." Li Wanhe was in no mood to think about anything else. He just wanted to get to Zhangzhou as quickly as possible. After the car left, Zhang Yuling's eyes dimmed, he held Li Jingcheng with one hand and held Zhang Shu with the other hand, and came to Zhou Ranran's side. Zhou Ranran's delivery date was approaching and it was no longer particularly convenient for her to move around. When she saw Zhang Yuling approaching, she still got up and walked over. She knew what was going on outside. But she was 8 months pregnant and couldn't do anything. "Ran Ran, take care of Jiangshu for me. I have something to do when I go out." "Well, I'll let Xiao Qi watch, don't worry." Wang Qi hurriedly walked over and held Jiangshu. Jiangshu was still very familiar with her and had no resistance. Zhang Yuling glanced at Wang Qi and asked, "What did Yao Yingsong say?" Wang Qi choked up and said, "He doesn't know the situation either. I asked him to inquire. I will tell Sister Yuling if I have any news." "Good." Zhang Yuling glanced at Zhou Ranran and wanted to say something, but didn't. After all, the focus today is not Zhou Ranran. She was going to see Anna Shen, Qin Si and Song Jiajia in the hospital. Either leave the child behind and leave with the money, or stay here quietly and don't have any evil thoughts. She will show no mercy to anyone who dares to make trouble in this matter. If something really happened to Li Yuan, she didn't want a lot of women to come out and say they wanted to divide Li Yuan's property. She didn't mind the money, she just didn't want people to see Li Yuan's jokes. He still cares about face. Although he is usually thick-skinned, he actually takes his reputation very seriously. He is almost successful, no matter what, he cannot be scolded. If you want money, she can give it. Keeping so much money is troublesome anyway. 2 hours later, after going back and forth several times, she finally got the thing done. No one said to take the money away, which still surprised her. No one held back during this panic, which shows that Li Yuan's vision is not bad. She even offered 50 billion, which was a sum of money that no one could refuse. After all, even if they come out to cause trouble, they won't be able to share that much. She rested for a while, fed Li Jingcheng some food, and then called Li Wanhe. Even though Zhou Wan usually makes the most decisions at home, once something happens, Zhou Wan will be confused. After calling for a long time, no one answered Li Wanhe's phone. She called Ho Wenbin with her backhand, and Ho Wenbin had been waiting at the door of the hospital. Soon, Ho Wenbin gave the results, and Zhou Wan and Li Wanhe went to the hospital. "What's the situation at the hospital now?" More than a dozen domestic surgical experts were called urgently. Those who were closer were picked up by helicopter, and those who were further away were sent by charter flights. More than 60 routes were temporarily suspended. "Well, keep watching over there and wait for me to pass. I brought a few diapers and the car at the door was ready." After she got into the car, she closed her eyes. In fact, she was more panicked than anyone else. her ability to bear farewell is weaker than anyone else's. She's not that smart, nor that courageous. But until now, she didn't believe that something happened to Li Yuan. She kept looking for excuses to convince herself. Unfortunately, I can't find it. She was too familiar with the official style. After Zhou Wan and his wife entered, their phone calls were cut off. There must be something going on and they didn't want them to pass on the news. So many experts from all over the country gathered in Zhangzhou, but no one except Li Yuan had this treatment. She felt like the accident was like a nightmare, clinging to her body. 2 children, both so young. She is more confused than anyone about the future. Perhaps her life had no path to begin with, but Li Yuan came and found a path. In the hospital, Zhou Wan still didn't shed a single tear, but without anyone to support her, she would have been lying on the ground. I walked around the hospital for a long time and finally got on the elevator. There were many people standing next to the elevator, loaded with guns and ammunition. The person who helped them handed over the handover at the elevator entrance. Li Wan, he sniffed. The elevator rose slowly and finally stopped on the 6th floor. The moment the elevator door opened, Li Yuan's face appeared. Zhou Wan didn't know where she got the strength, so she rushed over, hugged Li Yuan and started touching him here and there, her hands trembling. The touch became more and more real, her body became more and more intact, and all her emotions completely burst out at this moment. He just lay on Li Yuan and cried. "Son." Li Yuan sniffed. He had not heard his parents express such shy expressions for many years. Li Wan, he turned his head silently and wiped it. Originally, according to the plan, it was best not to let the old couple in. But Li Yuan could lie to others, and he really didn't want to make his parents sad, so he asked someone to call the old couple up. "Mom, I'm fine. Someone took the bullet for me." Yu on the side could only lower his head. "Is that something others are willing to block? It was you who forced others to block you." End of chapter. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 365. Zhou Wan's mood eased a lot after seeing that Li Yuan was safe and sound. But he still couldn't bear to let go of Li Yuan's hand throughout the whole process. "Why don't you call home?" Li Wan, he couldn't help but muttered next to him. Li Yuan glanced at Yu, and Yu quickly explained, "Brother, you don't know the situation at that time. If the boss calls, someone will definitely know that he is fine. In this way, the enemy may take action secretly." Zhou Wan immediately rolled her eyes at Li Wanhe and said, "You don't understand my son yet? Let me see, my son is right to do this. If everyone had the same mind as you, how could my son be as successful as he is now?" Li Wanhe. Grass. Is it someone else whose relationship is at stake in the car? On the way to Zhangzhou, Zhou Wan was in a daze and kept talking to herself, saying that if her son had no future, at least the family of 3 could live together peacefully. What now? Who can do this better than you? He was now certain that Li Yuan's shameless behavior was definitely inherited from Zhou Wan. Li Yuan took Zhou Wan to have something to eat, and then they talked about Guo Meng. Zhou Wan was still worried when she heard that Guo Meng was still being rescued. After all, he saved his son's life. This is a sentiment that the old Li family will never be able to repay for the rest of their lives. So after eating, she went to stay at the door of the operating room, looking inside from time to time. Even if she couldn't see anything, she wanted to feel at ease. It wasn't until around 8 o'clock in the night that Zhang Yuling came over. Seeing that Li Yuan was intact, she was not too excited. Just holding the diaper in one hand and holding the baby in the other proved her cramped state. The whole family gathered together at the hospital, and only Zhang Shu was placed with Zhou Ranran. "There are many places to rest, and there is a room for you to tidy up. The conditions are definitely not good. It would be nice to find a hospital bed to lie on. When Li Yuan was lying on the bed and resting with Li Jingcheng in his arms, Zhang Yuling sat next to him and peeled the fruit for him. After it was done, he fed him a bite. Daughter-in-law, there were so many people there before. This is my fault. I apologize to you. Zhang Yuling took a deep breath and looked at Li Yuan with an uncle-like expression. Do you have any intention of apologizing? Then you can't let me kowtow for you, can you? The father's debt must be paid to the son, so let my son take my place. After saying that, Li Yuan was ready to pick up Li Jingcheng. Zhang Yuling said quickly, don't torment him. I took him around for a long time today, and it was hard for him to sleep peacefully for a while. This is what you said. It has nothing to do with me. I also apologized. Zhang Yuling brought another piece of apple to Li Yuan's mouth, and Li Yuan took advantage of the situation and ate it in one bite. Well, thank you, wife. Give me a kiss. Zhang Yuling said, you shouldn't give them advice. Now you have become someone else's bargaining chip. You are obviously a victim, but now you have made them successful. It doesn't matter. I hope to get rid of some people. It doesn't matter who gets the benefit. Well, what? Am I the kind of person who puts personal interests above all else? Everyone's interests are my interests. Zhang Yuling really never thought that Li Yuan had such thoughts. In this matter, the longer Li Yuan hides, the worse it will be for himself and the better for others. Others can rely on this to eliminate dissidents. I had more or less some evidence in my hand before. Under normal circumstances, there is no way to prove it, and the evidence is of little use. But now, with the help of Li Yuan's accident, he can bring out all the small evidence from the past, and kill his competitors along the way. You will offend people by doing this. Those who have been implicated will definitely bite Li Yuan. Li Yuan said nonchalantly, it also depends on whether they have good teeth. They are just bereaved dogs. But if the teeth are really good, how can a little thing bring them down? It's not that I don't have the ability, a lot of problems still occupy the position. Zhang Yuling discovered that Li Yuan was more predatory than she thought. Those words of his showed their true feelings. With your personality, why don't I believe it when you say that Guo Meng took a bullet for you? Could it be that you pulled Guo Meng to block the bullet for you, right? Li Yuan immediately said, what words, what words? Guo Meng is a close friend of mine. How many years have I known her? Zhang Yuling laughed and said slowly, how about I deduce the scene at that time? You must have pulled Guo Meng to your side, and then you raised your hand and put the gun on Guo Meng's shoulder to shoot that Lu Mubai fought back. Lu Mubai had almost no vision of you, so he could only search as much as possible. Fake. Lu Mubai must have received professional training, otherwise he would never take action. As long as you reveal more than half of your body, it will be a sure kill for him. It is impossible for him to hit Guo Meng for no reason. Guo Meng is just an ordinary person. And he doesn't have the reaction speed to block the gun for you. And so far, Guo Meng is not dead, which means that he has probably been rescued, but he still needs to wait to get through the dangerous period. I am more injured by gunshots than anyone else. Yes, it will form a huge cavity effect. If it is not missed, it will be difficult to survive. Guo Meng's reaction speed to block the bullet for you can only be because Lu Mubai really can't find a suitable position. If you didn't, Guo Meng is standing in front of you, who would believe it? Before Li Yuan could speak, Zhang Yuling continued, furthermore, I taught you all your marksmanship. I was present throughout your training process. With your posture at that time, you didn't have a particularly stable method at all. You would definitely raise your hand, use Guo Meng's shoulders as support, because you don't have much room for error, and you don't want Lu Mubai to fire a second shot. Li Yuan smiled and said, yes, I am actually such a shameless person. Even though I have a bulletproof vest on me, I still dare not risk my life. Li Yuan must have been very embarrassed when someone exposed his villain's behavior. Zhang Yuling also smiled and held his hand, and said seriously, "You are right to do this. Anyone can die, but you cannot die. No matter who it is, even if I am here, even if the child is here, you can use it. We won't blame you if they come to survive. I don't want to give it up. Really, I certainly don't blame you." After a long time, Li Yuan finally said, "Daughter-in-law. Let's sleep together." Zhang Yuling glanced at the hospital bed and said, "It's too small, there's no room for two people. Just turn sideways." "What about Jing Cheng? Give it to my mother. She must also miss her grandson." He. Everything was calm in the hospital. Lu Muibai and Guo Meng's surgeries were both successful, but they didn't dare to say 100% that they were fine. At least the most dangerous 48 hours must be spent. But it's different outside. The news was a mess. Whether it was true or false, the game behind it reached its peak during this day. Yao Yingsong didn't even expect that he would be promoted for no reason, and he was notified in the middle of the night. If someone vacates the position, he will naturally have the opportunity. Originally, he had to wait another 2 or 3 years. Early the next morning, Cao Ping from Qinghe County came out of the office dizzy. He also hadn't slept all night. He hasn't been promoted yet, but he will soon. There has always been a mountain above him, a bare stone mountain that has no nutrition, but it just occupies the position. As a result, many of his ideas were not implemented. But now that the foundation of the stone mountain is loose, he only needs to ask his family members to pry it off to remove the smelly stone. God-given opportunity. Otherwise, he will have to endure it for another 10 years. No one knows what will happen in 10 years. At this time, he hoped that Li Yuan would get better. Working with someone like Li Yuan would have a bright future. Li Yuan stayed very quietly in the hospital, and no one disturbed him. Chat, eat, sleep. He doesn't even bother to go online to receive information from the outside world. It wasn't until the third day that the hospital said that Guo Meng had passed the critical period, and the people around him breathed a sigh of relief. Compared with the people around me, I am really nothing. Because he's really not that nervous. Of course, if Guo Meng can do well, it must be the best. If something happened, he would be disappointed at most, and he would never experience any major emotional fluctuations. On this day, news was also released to the public that Li Yuan had been rescued. The matter has almost been dealt with, and it's time to come out and stabilize people's hearts. After all, in the past 2 days, A shares fell 8 points for 2 consecutive days. After the news of Li Yuan's rescue was announced, almost all A share stocks hit their daily limit on Wednesday. Li Yuan was still in no hurry to be discharged from the hospital. They had finished their work there, and it was time to get busy with their own affairs. There will still be safety risks for him in the future, and many things will have to be rearranged. After waiting for another day, Guo Meng woke up. Li Yuan followed Yu Yuan first. Guo Meng opened his eyes and looked at Li Yuan with complicated eyes. After asking a few questions, Li Yuan asked Yu Yu to do ideological work for her. The main thing is to round out his previous statement to prevent Guo Meng from spilling the beans. Things have happened, and there is a reason, which is also good news for Guo Meng. At least so far, Lu Muibai's matter has not implicated her. It was like you had finished saying everything that needed to be said before it was time for Li Yuan to appear. Yu Yu left wisely, leaving only 2 people in the room. Guo Meng's body still hurt and he didn't dare to breathe hard. But I still asked that sentence. Did you already know that Lu Muibai had a problem? I do not know. Guo Meng was stunned. Li Yuan didn't know, so he called her over in advance? Then if he has no problem, have you ever thought about how I will end up doing those things? Although you are not engaged to him yet, at least we are boyfriend and girlfriend. Li Yuan said, some things don't necessarily need any explanation. First of all, my people noticed something was wrong. I can only amplify the suspicion infinitely. If he has always been normal, then I will too. Let's chat normally with you. Nothing happens for no reason, there is a cause and effect. Then you can leave. If you want to leave, who can stop you? How do I leave? Just turn around and leave? Wouldn't it expose more flaws? You can call your bodyguards to come in and cover your departure. For some things, it is better to have results than to have no results. I can't completely eliminate my future social circle because of such a little suspicion. I didn't have any evidence at that time. Guo Meng took a breath and said, then let me ask you, did you ever feel distressed when you used me to block the bullet? Of course I feel bad, but I know I can't die. The first time you had an accident, I carried you to the hospital with you in my arms. I found you the best doctor in the country at all costs. I will also give you the best doctor in the future. Find a plastic surgeon and make sure you don't leave any scars on your body. Guo Meng looked at the ceiling and said silently, but the injuries inside the body will never heal for a lifetime. Li Yuan said, Mr. Guo, strictly speaking, this matter is not that bad. At least it will not be exposed until you get married. If Lu Mubai succeeds in the future and you are still married, at this price, can you bear it? Can your family bear it? Guo Meng said nothing. How could she not know this? But she struggled on the edge of life and death for 3 days. The pain and the scars left on her body were too unforgettable for her. Although you have been wronged now, at least you don't have to worry about it in the future. Recuperate well, and when you are discharged from the hospital, I will treat you to a meal. I don't want to eat, I have another question to ask you. Forget it, I won't ask any more. Guo Meng closed his eyes. Then my parents will come in later, don't let it slip. After Li Yuan came out, Zhou Wan and Li Wanhe who were waiting at the door went in. Zhang Yuling didn't go in and was too lazy to disturb Guo Meng. At the door, Zhang Yuling asked, when are you going to be discharged from the hospital? The day after tomorrow, just transfer to the hospital and go back to recuperate. Zhang Yuling hesitated for a moment and said, then let me tell you something. Don't be angry. What's the matter? Well, I thought you were dead at first, so I divided your property. Each of your little lovers took 50 billion and ran away. So after you go back, there is a high probability that no one will come to see you. Li Yuan. Haha, I don't have any little lovers, they are all friends. 50 billion is indeed a lot of money, but Li Yuan doesn't believe that everyone will leave. There are some who will leave, he believes. For example, Qin Si, Cao Yuan, or Chen Ji, Shen Anna. We're all friends. Then I've been cheated. Then I won't give it to them. I'll tell them immediately. Li Yuan hurriedly hugged Zhang Yuling and said, forget it, 50 billion is not a big sum of money. I will ask Qingtian Group to find an opportunity to give the money to them in a few days. If he really leaves, Li Yuan will not keep him. Are you so willing to do so? 50 billion can be earned back soon. I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about people. Otherwise, if people's hearts are lost, it will be difficult to lead the team. The best way is to kick out those who have lost people's hearts. There is no point in staying. Then what if I leave? Take your money. That won't work. You are my wife. Even if you go to the end of the world, I have to chase you back. Everyone else is just a friend, and the relationship is not that deep. After saying that, Li Yuan kissed Zhang Yuling on the cheek and added with a smile, you won't leave either. Who in the world doesn't know that I, Li Yuan, have a good eye for people, and I have chosen a wife with all the hard work, how could you do such a heartless thing? Yes, in terms of being shameless and telling lies with your eyes open, who can be better than you? But I also admit that you have a good sense. Even if you have nothing now, you are still worth at least 500 billion emotionally. Li Yuan pinched his fingers and said, "It's not 500 billion, is it? Did you miscalculate? I remember it was only 400 billion. End of chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it." Author, Lao He. Chapter 366. Li Yuan spent his birthday in the hospital. Fortunately, he usually doesn't care about this. On the internet, information is slowly being integrated and clear. Li Yuan was injured, but not seriously. The reason was that Guo Meng blocked the greatest damage for him. Li Yuan received the second impact of the bullet and still bled a lot. Some people still know who Guo Meng is. That black widow in the fund industry. Countless people had long wanted Li Yuan to get rid of her. I don't even know how many rumors there are that Li Yuan and Guo Meng have an improper relationship. After all, Li Yuan has the attributes of a scumbag, and it would be abnormal not to think about that aspect. Any girl who can have any scandal with Li Yuan must not be ugly, otherwise she is doubting the vision of the world's richest man. Many girls on the internet will find excuses to say that they are Li Yuan's ex-girlfriend, and netizens can kill them with just one sentence. Do you believe that I am Qin Shiwang, or do you believe that Yuan Shen can like her? Only Tong Swifi I received a wave of traffic from Li Yuan's ex-girlfriend, but now, all her accounts have been blocked. Registering a trumpet account was also reported very quickly. Since learning that Guo Meng took a bullet for Li Yuan, fewer people scolded her online. Although there have been a lot less in the past 2 years compared to before, it's not because I don't want to curse, but because I can't think of new words. She was called Black Widow before, but now she is called Goddess Guo. There are even some words of praise hanging on the front. For example, the great, gentle, and most beautiful in the world. Before we knew it, it was mid-May, Guo Meng was still hospitalized, and Li Yuan had been at home for 10 days. After what happened, he doesn't want to go anywhere anytime soon. He didn't need to worry about Lu Muibai's fate. There were too many people who wanted him dead. The reason why we go all out to rescue him is just to get more useful information. Wall Street must have suffered a lot this time, and they don't have many chess pieces like Lu Muibai. This kind of thing cannot be measured in terms of money. If hundreds of millions or billions of dollars can be spent on one, they will definitely not refuse. Spending money is secondary. There are not many people like Lu Muibai who are obviously very high status but are willing to stoop to this level. On May 14, Li Yuan received a call from the god of wealth again. Li Yuan, I've just finished my work here. You can make preparations over there. I'll give you approval at any time. Li Yuan asked doubtfully, are you done? He made up for the recent news but didn't find the results he wanted. Yeah, do you have anything to say? Old man, let me tell you the truth. Someone here knows that a female journalist can get Cambridge University to name a garden after her. Another week passed, and Li Yuan finally saw the information he wanted. The matter ends here. No one told him the outcome of this matter, and he didn't want to know. Even if he does something to the best of his ability, he is not afraid of being criticized by others. At the end of June, Althide Stone Bank entered the country silently, and those who were not relevant staff did not know about it at all. Even the relevant staff couldn't figure out what this Althide Stone Bank was about. Althide Bank's first transaction was to use $100 billion as a deposit and exchange it for 650 billion Chinese coins. This exchange rule does not fluctuate based on exchange rate fluctuations and is equivalent to currency swaps. At the same time, Yu, as a representative, began to acquire land in the country. As for those in the hands of real estate companies, he doesn't want them for the time being, because it's cheaper to get them now and it's easier to plan. If you don't take it, then you can start with it. Once you take it, it will start with 100,000 acres. For example, in Qinghe County, 120,000 acres of land were acquired, next to the former square and hospital. That piece of land is almost reaching the towns below. The scale of demolition is not large, but the investment is not small. All of them are mainly improved housing, with a minimum building area of 137 square meters. Li Yuan cancelled the public stall, but the house price was not low. A super large community of more than 100,000 acres, surrounded by meter-shaped commercial streets, is divided into more than a dozen districts. Each district is independent of each other, but at the same time closely connected. The total investment exceeds 50 billion, and this is even if the land does not ask for much money. However, there are conditions. Construction workers and materials must be local first. After all, there are very few people who are willing to invest in real estate now, and real estate is the most employment-generating job. Li Yuan's goal is to recruit 30,000 construction workers and build nearly 3,000 buildings in batches within 2 years. It may not necessarily make money, but it may cost tens of billions in wages. It's mainly about pattern exploration. First of all, construction workers can ensure that the labor force in the 4 surrounding counties can be put to use and stabilize employment. In order to serve these 30,000 people and serve the entire project, it will also drive more than 10 times the output value and provide 10 times the number of jobs. The per capita income in Qinghe County is only 1,800. The main reason is that there are a large number of unemployed people. When working outside the home, the wages are generally not low. If high-paying jobs can be provided locally, the boost will be extremely obvious. Once built and sold, such a large community will need at least several hundred security guards, 2,000 to 3,000 cleaning staff, and 1,000 to 2,000 service personnel. Based on their service purpose, they can train more technical service personnel, such as cleaning, decorating and installing household appliances in community rooms. The biggest problem is how to sell the house and then use the service to tell others that this house is worth the money. Real estate plus services can maximize expansion. Otherwise, China will never become rich, because there are only 200 to 300 million jobs that can make money. Almost all of the remaining 1.1 billion people earn less than RMB 5,000, and there are even more than 600 million people whose monthly income is less than RMB 1,000. In other countries, let alone 200-300 million jobs, even if there were only 20 million jobs, the per capita figure would still be very good. But domestically, there must be nearly 600 million jobs. If you put all the technical positions in the world together, there wouldn't be that many. This is why even if real estate is about to collapse, it still cannot stop. Real estate is the engine of the entire economy. Without real estate, more than 50 million jobs would be lost in the country. The previous urban area had already been planned, and Li Yuan was too lazy to participate. No matter how good the location was, it was meaningless to him. He wants to destroy all the old cities, make the houses in the old cities worthless, and let the prices of those properties with poor planning and poor services collapse. Only then can he show the value of his properties, restart the real estate engine, and compare with it was stronger before. In the past, the number of real estate-related jobs was only 5 or 6 times greater. For example, there are 10 million construction workers, the building materials, food, clothing, housing, and transportation suppliers behind them, and real estate sales, which add up to only 40 to 50 million. After he expands the service, the number of related jobs may exceed 10 times or even 13 or 4 times. In order to pursue the ultimate in service, employees must be treated well. It doesn't have to be a high salary. 4 to 5,000 is the best in the county. The main thing is the sense of security. 5 insurances and 1 housing fund, gifts during the holidays, and year-end bonuses. Many people never know what 5 insurances and 1 housing fund are, let alone receive New Year holiday gifts from the company. Even if those things are not valuable, the average price per capita is 5 to 600 yuan throughout the year. In the dating market, both men and women will sometimes put forward a condition, that is, they require the other person's parents to have a pension. The pension is actually not much money, and the conditions for receiving it are very harsh. But there is always one thought in life. At least once you have a pension, you don't have to save too much, and you have to be prepared to be cheated accidentally. The education and medical support provided by the house are okay, but if you want people to settle down, they still need to work. This model was originally only suitable for first-tier cities. The reason why it was piloted in Qinghe County was that Li Yuan planned to move some companies here. For example, Ho Wenbin and others are planning a tourist attraction in Qinghe, striving to have something that can leave an internet celebrity industry. From food, clothing, housing, and transportation to providing materials and environment. This is a complex system that operates at the lowest cost in Qinghe County because Qinghe County is not large to begin with. The entire system will not cost more than 100 billion to complete. A big city builds a community in the suburbs, dozens of miles away from the city center. All items in the entire system must be multiplied by 10. Qinghe County does not need much success, as long as it is proven feasible. Li Yuan dares to invest in big cities. If it doesn't work, if it can survive up to 100 billion, it will be just a waste of money. He doesn't want to go to a big city and play around with a trillion. This can be regarded as the last career in his life. He no longer needs to focus on other careers. Of course, in the past 2 years, we will definitely have to fight with Wall Street again. Although that shot was blocked by Guo Meng, the hatred is still there. Hospital. Just a few days after Song Jiajia was discharged from the hospital, Zhou Ranran moved in because she was going to give birth in the next 2 days. The reason why Song Jiajia stayed in the hospital for 3 or 4 months was that it was inconvenient to take her child back to her hometown, and she was worried about going to the hospital when she went to Zhangzhou, so she simply stayed here. The child was older and less prone to problems, so he and Lu Yan returned to Zhangzhou. I will definitely not go home for the time being. There is no reason to tell the relatives at home, and the news will be spread accidentally. Mainly because Song Dalong also felt ashamed to go home. Li Yuan came to the delivery room when no one was around. Zhou Ranran was holding a mobile phone and playing games. Li Yuan waited beside him for a long time. Zhou Ranran finished one round and started another. He idly fed Zhou Ranran some fruit and waited until Zhou Ranran finished the second game before putting down his phone. Li Yuan said, "If you play another round, everyone outside will be unable to hold it in." There is no shortage of people around Zhou Ranran. The reason why there is a shortage of people is simply because Li Yuan is here. Zhou Ranran handed the phone to Li Yuan and said, "In the next 2 days, you can help me log in to my account to receive tasks. Don't make me lose my continuous login. I am only a few days away from getting the skin." Li Yuan. This damn login bonus, sooner or later someone has to take action to get rid of this. Can't we buy it? They don't sell it, besides, you have to make the game interesting for yourself. Spending money on it is too boring. Li Yuan asked, "I took away the mobile phone, what if your gangsters have trouble with you? The contact number is in Xiaoqi's hand. She will tell me. Only a few people know this number. Xiaoqi won't be able to stay with you for long. Now that Yao Yingsong has been promoted, he definitely wants to get married as soon as possible. No matter how much he delays, it will only be delayed until the end of the year." Zhou Ranran nodded, "Yes, I will return Xiaoqi to him in 1 month. There's no need to be in such a hurry. It will definitely be fine in 2 or 3 months. But do you want me to arrange a nanny for you? Secretary. Joe Ran still has a lot of things to do, although they all seem to be trivial. No, I'll ask my rat girlfriend to come over when the time comes. Li Yuan's eyes widened. He has a girlfriend. Yes, I said I met him while playing games. He looks average and a little fat, but he has a good personality. While talking, Joe Ran opened her phone and found a photo. Well, this is it. Li Yuan glanced at the photo and fell silent. The girl is obviously pretty, right? This guy Mouse has tens of millions in debt. How dare you marry someone? Joe Ran raised his eyebrows. Hey, how did you know? Can I not know Mouse's character? He must have extremely low self-esteem now. He has never thought about finding a girlfriend. He just wants to pay off his debt within 10 years. Joe Ran said helplessly, that girl came here on her own initiative. She seems to have known Mozi for a long time. Li Yuan opened the game, found an ID, and asked, is it this person? Joe Ran was even more surprised. Not many people knew about this matter, and Lu Hao did not dare to tell Li Yuan about it. How does this guy know so clearly? Ang, do you play games too? This girl's WeChat account is what I asked for from Mouse. That was 4 years ago. Li Yuan thought he could reform Lu Hao, but the reform failed. The girl is really nice, with a soft and stubborn character. Something happened at home last year, so I borrowed some money from Mouse. I paid it off this year, and I came over to treat Mouse to a meal. I happened to be there too. Li Yuan guessed it as soon as he heard this. Are you getting older inside? I just scolded the rat a few times. Li Yuan smiled and said, let me deduce it, are you scolding a rat for being in debt of tens of millions and lending money to a girl you don't know? Joe Ran. Although there are still some differences, the meaning is that. What she said at that time should be more harsh, so as to highlight that Lu Hao values girls more and give girls a certain sense of security. Of course, Joe Ran would have nothing to say if he ran away after hearing that he had tens of millions in debt. After all, Lu Hao is still a big internet celebrity. Anyone with a discerning eye will know that it will be a matter of time before he pays off the money. Joe Ran, that girl used to be a clerk. She is 3 years older than Mouse. Now the girl has a good impression of Mouse, but Mouse is a fool. This is not simple. That guy Mouse has low self-esteem. He is cowardly when he owes favors to others. Whatever others say will be whatever he wants. Just bring that girl to your side, pay her a few years' salary in advance, and then the money forward it to Jushin Media, and I will tell Mouse that his girlfriend helped him pay off his debt. Joe Ran. This guy Li Yuan. No wonder I can catch up with so many girls. Sister Ran, you are slandering me. Apart from you, no one else is worth my troubles to pursue. End of chapter. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 367. What Li Yuan said about love and so on, Joe Ran selectively filtered it out. Not credible at all. He didn't know how many times he had said the same thing. Maybe with his status, he doesn't need to say those words now, but with his recent performance, he must have told Zhang Yuling that this is the most basic thing. After Li Yuan returned home, Zhang Yuling asked, how was it? When will the baby be born? It's only for the past 2 days. Do you want to go and have a look? Zhang Yuling thought for a while, forget it, let's wait until the baby is born. Boy or girl? Girl, I just haven't decided what to call her yet. Zhang Yuling's eyes lit up when he heard it was a girl. She also wants a girl. Unfortunately, both babies were boys. Last name is Li. What are you talking about? Of course it's Joe. Oh, Ran didn't think about it herself. No, You have to ask me to name you. I haven't even finished college. I really can't think of a good name. Wife, please help me come up with one. Joe Fanchu. Huh? Is it discipleship again? Zhang Yuling glared at Li Yuan. This guy obviously knows everything, and he just pretends to be so awesome. Pulling Li Yuan into the house, she said, I also want a daughter. There are 2 of them. Ang, the school isn't built yet anyway, so I don't have much to do, right? Li Yuan did not agree in the end because there was a problem with the following timing. If you get pregnant now, you will face a lot of challenges next year when the baby is only a few months old. Children who are a few months old are most at risk. If they get sick, they don't know how to treat them. 2 days later, Zhou Ranran gave birth successfully, and Li Yuan went over and stayed for most of the day. Then he got into work mode. After the liquidation of Lotus Trust's funds last year, Li Yuan buried another $90 billion in it. After about a year, the US stock index returned to its peak level and even broke through new highs. Naturally, that $90 billion also made a lot of money. The holding amount is close to $160 billion. Another point is that after several years of turmoil, Bitcoin is ready to move again. After seeing a related news yesterday, he ran to take a look at the trend and found that there were a lot of active funds in it. 3 years ago, the group of capital on Wall Street trapped at least $200 billion, but after a few years, they gradually untied it. Especially last year, there was a wave of vigorous speculation, attracting a lot of scattered funds into the game. He brought more than $20,000 in Bitcoin directly to $40,000. At the beginning of this year, the price continued to rise, once reaching $68,000. This location is when they ship in large quantities. The daily trading volume is very high, basically maintaining a turnover of $10 billion every day. From a financial perspective, this data is quite eye-catching. The US dollar is indeed strong, but its decline cannot be ignored. There is no point in doing so if there is no guarantee of a strong dollar. The US dollar's interest rate hike next year will essentially mean unlimited money printing, causing massive inflation. In order to deal with inflation, one must either raise interest rates or print money on a larger scale. The latter is easy, but the effect is worse. It is equivalent to taking a pill that enhances the body's potential. The choice of raising interest rates cannot be said to be good either. It can only be regarded as drinking poison to quench thirst, at least it can delay time. Drag others to death, and then Wall Street will bring a large amount of cash to buy other people's properties, integrate those properties, make up for the debt interest hole, and maybe it can continue for another 20 to 30 years. There is no perfect method in the world, and we are basically making progress through trial and error. No one can predict what will happen in the next 20 or 30 years. The US dollar is going to raise interest rates, and many institutions around the world can predict it. Through the interest rate hike cycle, allowing the US dollar to flow back and reducing the number of US dollars circulating in the market can suppress inflation to a certain extent. The price is the need to pay high interest rates, and the price is reduced domestic economic liquidity. After all, higher deposit interest rates mean higher loan interest rates. Whether you are starting a company, the cost of buying a house or a car will be much higher than before. Wall Street's idea is actually very simple, that is, to make money. Regardless of whether interest rates are raised or lowered, they just want to make money. How to earn interest rate increase? Either buy treasury bonds and earn some stable interest, or operate the capital market. The securities market is out of business. After interest rates are raised, a large amount of funds in the market will flee. The earnings of the US stocks they rely on for survival will definitely fall short of expectations. Not to mention that Li Yuan raised hundreds of billions of dollars in Boeing, and other funds combined, he also raised at least $300 billion. The sum of these two sums of money almost wiped out all their profits. At most, there is only a little hard work left. Li Yuan opened a short Bitcoin contract while reducing his position in US stocks. They wanted to have a good meal before the Ice Age came, but Li Yuan would not let them get their way. In this economic cold winter, you are wearing unlined clothes to resist. After all, he also needs to gain weight, and there is only so much food in the world. A shares have flattened and cannot squeeze out any profit. He can only stare at Wall Street. Especially Bitcoin, at this position, if Wall Street funds run away, they don't know how much profit they will make. Therefore, Li Yuan spent a lot of money on short contracts. On the first day, he spent nearly $1 billion on short orders. Almost $500 million in stocks were reduced that day. There is not much movement in reducing stock positions. It is spread out among dozens or hundreds of stocks and is very inconspicuous. The next day, he placed another $1 billion in short Bitcoin orders. After Wall Street discovered the situation, they accelerated the release of chips. Because Bitcoin is still priced at $60,000, if you put more chips in this position, you can make more money. They invested more than $200 billion in the past few years. Based on the price of $60,000, it is already worth more than $400 billion. Throughout last year, they invested nearly $30 billion to boost stocks, and in the first half of this year, they have been quietly reducing their holdings. The holdings have been reduced by almost $150 billion, leaving more than $200 billion in chips. Suddenly they were hit, and they made a fortune. It turned out that no one took over the golden pit that was smashed out. In other words, it's not that no one took it, but that the effort was too weak to handle it. As usual, after they smashed it, they would quickly pull it back. The price is just a snap, which leaves an impression. Just like an apple, no matter how much it costs, if someone is willing to pay 50,000 yuan to buy it, then the pricing standard for this apple will appear. If you trade it several times and the price is around 50,000 each time, people will subconsciously believe that this apple is worth 50,000. Occasionally it fell to 30,000, but soon it entered the 50,000 range. Such a pull would make people firm up their ideas. People can be influenced. Take Mutai, for example. When the stock price was 500, no one thought it would reach 1,000 one day. After reaching 1,000, no one dared to think that it could reach 1,005. When it comes to a shares, this term is called bottom building. If it stays at one price for a long time and eventually returns to that position no matter how many twists and turns it takes, then no matter how outrageous the price is, it will become a recognized value. The financial industry is essentially about cheating and stealing. Implant the value of magnified leverage into everyone's mind, as if it should be worth that much in the first place. So when Wall Street saw someone smashing the market, they didn't panic at all. Even if the undertaking is not strong enough, they can undertake it themselves. They have a lot of chips in their hands and will always be the biggest winners. Before we knew it, it was August. A shares rebounded briefly after it was confirmed that Li Yuan's surgery was successful, but ultimately failed to rebound due to lack of funds. The company Nanshan Group has begun to make a name for itself in China, mainly because many migrant workers have joined the company. The positions in this company are similar to Qingtian Group, but the starting point is not high. Ordinary service personnel only have a basic salary of 5,000, technical service personnel have a basic salary of 8,000, and technical and manual service personnel have a basic salary of more than 10,000. Even among managers, few have a basic salary of more than 20,000. The personnel structure of this company looks very abnormal. But there are so many people recruited. Starting in June and ending in August. In just 2 months, 20,000 people have been hired. Around Qinghe County, Nanshan Group is very famous. Many people who cannot find a job have found their place in Nanshan Group and began to experience the working life of 5 insurances and 1 housing fund. Nationwide, Venus Motor has been tepid, with sales barely rising from more than 1,000 units a month to more than 2,000 units per month. However, Venus Motor's pace of expansion has never stopped. The store layout in first and second tier cities across the country has been completed, and the layout is in progress in third and fourth tier cities. This is something that many brands with monthly sales of 5,000 or 6,000 units fail to do because the cost is very high. The poverty alleviation funds promised by Li Yuan have also gradually entered the operational stage. Specially look for remote and poor areas to maximize the advantages there, subsidize agricultural products, and supplement education and medical care. The agricultural products eventually returned to Bixen Mall, and many prices were extremely low. After all, as long as there is something valuable, someone will come to buy it without Li Yuan taking action. Only the unprofitable items will get his turn. He must fulfill his promise. Money is of little use if it is not spent. Qingtian Group's dividends from Qingtian Capital alone were close to 400 billion, and it earned more than 100 billion from reducing its stock holdings. At present, the market value of Qingtian Capital has been hit to 2 trillion yuan. Those big domestic capitals can only take it on, including foreign capital. If they don't bite the bullet, all the money they invested will be wasted. They are not far away from controlling Qingtian Capital. Only when the shell of Qingtian Capital is put into operation can they minimize their losses. Li Yuan made a video call with Ho Wenbin and others from Xu Yanlin's side to discuss the affairs of Nanshan Group. For Nanshan Group, Li Yuan personally invested 15 billion, Zhou Ranran invested 3 billion, Gu Dongsheng invested 2 billion, and 13PIC invested 8 billion in total, for a total of 28 billion. Most of the operating funds are mainly loans. It will be difficult to lose all the 28 billion. The main content of the discussion is to expand the internet celebrity economy, which can also be participated by all people. After finishing talking about some of her thoughts, Xu Yanlin brought him a glass of water. In July, Xu Yanlin graduated successfully. Li Yuan hung up the video, pulled Xu Yanlin and asked, "Have you decided where to go?" Xu Yanlin still wanted to work. Li Yuan gave her 2 choices, or she could work at the hospital at the door. The doctors there were very good and the equipment was very complete. It was no worse than the top 3 hospitals in the city. There just aren't any big highlights. The other is the biopharmaceutical laboratory, which currently mainly produces generic drugs. Those are drugs that have expired, such as ibuprofen. Well, I want to have a baby. Xu Yanlin clasped her little hands and said. Li Yuan quickly held her hand and said, "We'll wait and see, next year or the year after that. You're still young now." Xu Yanlin couldn't accept this excuse. How is she small? Already 22 years old. But She didn't know how to refute Li Yuan, because she had never thought of resisting Li Yuan in her heart. "Listen to me. When we get married next year, it will be almost done, otherwise if you get pregnant before marriage, others will gossip about you when you work in the future." Xu Yanlin's eyes widened. Marry. End of chapter. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 368. Li Yuan received his ID card 2 days ago. A name called Lu Hansheng. However, this one was reserved for Zhou Ranran, and he could only wait until next year or the year after that for the 3rd ID card to be obtained. Most ID cards are of no use and can only be used secretly. He has been spending a lot of time with Xu Yanlin recently, mainly because he didn't see her very often when she was in school. Of course, the most important thing is that he feels too depressed recently, and he feels particularly relaxed when he is with Xu Yanlin. Of course, occasionally Shen Anna, who is so good looking, would be asked to act as his assistant. He still has to work about 10 hours a day, but he spends less than 5 hours dealing with finance. The other few hours are spent dealing with Nanshan Group matters. Ho Wenbin and others naturally have a strong advantage in doing things. However, Li Yuan's own ideas still need to be implanted. What does the internet celebrity economy need? We need gimmicks and novelties. When internet celebrities go to a place to play, even if it is not fun, there must be something that attracts attention. There is no sea in Qinghe County, only a few mountains, lakes, and reservoirs with good environment. First of all, it is necessary to plan no less than 500 fishing places in several nearby counties. The fishing types and rules of each place must be outstanding to attract people who pay attention to fishing. Venues include wild fishing, paid fishing, and competitive fishing. Those who care about life should integrate the living resources of several counties, starting from the 4 aspects of food, clothing, housing, and transportation, and at the same time lay out the urban service industry. When tourists come to the county town, they should always give them a map, right? Explain the attractions, provide various contact information, and finally indicate the standard fees to avoid being ripped off. At the same time, the complaint phone number must be kept open 24 hours a day, and someone will be arranged to deal with it as soon as possible when an incident occurs. Finally, it can be expanded further, and services similar to Kixing Automobile can also be added. In fact, no one is unwilling to spend money, but most people will measure whether the money is worth it. You can come here to travel, you can come here to find a job, or you can even come here to live. If there are people, there will be an economy. The disadvantage here is that the positions are not comprehensive enough. Even if Li Yuan moves several companies here, there are still many limitations. But as long as life is better, as long as education and medical care are good enough, many people will be unable to refuse. What CAO Ping has to do is to rectify the market and crack down on unhealthy trends. For example, drivers at train stations rip off customers, fake scales at night markets, and merchants' products are substandard. Although there are not many tourists coming now, Li Yuan has moved his company and has brought tens of thousands of people here invisibly. If tens of thousands of people have a bad experience, how can it spread through word of mouth? Cao Ping really couldn't get much money, but Li Yuan could borrow it from a bank, such as Althide Bank. The commercial plaza that Li Yuan built before now has a large flow of people. There may not be a few well-known international brands in it, but they are all projects with high cost performance and great playability. The reason why the label domestic products are bad is simply because imported products are generally more expensive and the quality is guaranteed. In fact, at the same price, domestic products must be given priority. China has monopolized nearly 40% of the world's output value, and most of the imported products are actually processed domestically. Unfortunately, domestic products do not have enough brand power and cannot enjoy brand premiums. We can only determine the direction and then make up for it from the service. Perhaps 20 years later, the brand power will be improved bit by bit. Internal economic circulation never happens overnight. With regard to the current consumer credibility on the internet, Li Yuan feels that he will never be able to succeed in internal circulation. In recent years, too many things invisible on paper have been lost for the sake of economic data. When my mother went shopping recently, she felt that it was much better than before. She is usually very stingy, and she has been spending more recently. Zhang Yuling must take the lead. None of the clothes she wears are from foreign brands, and she actively endorses Qin Si. The bags in my hand are also the kind that don't have strong brand power, but are of good quality and texture. Li Yuan rarely posts updates, Zhang Yuling is enough. Zhang Yuling's Bixin account has more than 5 million fans. She updates Li Yuan's situation whenever she has nothing to do, and Li Yuan will also deliberately appear in front of her camera. With Zhang Yuling taking the lead, the people around her are also changing. For example, Ho Wenbin and others no longer show off Porsche, Ferrari, or Hermes. Instead, he actively shared Kixing Motors services and the projects supported by Li Yuan with his friends. The rich, the second generation, can serve as the vein of product power. It will also form a strong blind obedience effect. The anchors of Joshin media and the bosses of listed groups. Even if they don't know Li Yuan, many people will start to imitate Li Yuan's outfit. Because it was said that a company was about to go bankrupt. Li Yuan accidentally saw that the boss of the company was wearing domestic products and decisively invested 300 million in the company. Now the company not only survived, but also received a large number of orders from Bixen Mall. And Yu, this guy who holds product launches every day, drives his Venus every time he enters the venue. The clothes on his body and Shinsee's logo all look expensive. Details matter, disingenuous or not. The West used this method to rule the world. For the sake of brand and business, they can do anything against their will. Only Chinese businessmen show how generous they are all day long. Magnanimity will only become an excuse for the Navy to attack, and it does not make people appear noble. Not everyone has the ability to discern and think. When they see that none of your bosses use your own products, they will subconsciously compare your products to others. Li Yuan didn't dare to cooperate in depth with a boss who didn't even want to pretend. Last time Jia Hua was the old man, Li Yuan reminded him. No matter how powerful they are, they shouldn't be so generous. If their family members dare to use other mobile phones, why can't they be beaten? Domestic businessmen just have not come out from being euphemistic and implicit. Perhaps this is the character of the Chinese people, who believe in friendship and peace. But in fact, others will not treat you that way. People can print money and give the CIA more than $100 billion in marketing fees every year. Li Yuan also discussed this issue with CAO Ping, and tried to raise consumer credibility at all costs. Li Yuan doesn't need the money he lent them. He can just use some land to pay off the debt when the time comes. Li Yuan also did it for himself. After all, he only had the ability to discover problems, but he did not have the ability to create things out of thin air. The great economic cycle is his most trustworthy means. Even Zhang Yuling's identity may not be reliable. If someone really wanted to touch him, it would be nothing more than being shameless. At any time, the initiative should be in your own hands. Even if someone feels that he has done too much in Qinghe County, they will not do anything to him. After all, it is just a small county town and cannot cause any trouble. And when he is throwing away money, not only will everyone not refuse, but they will welcome him. He silently looked at this year's arrangements. After another half-month, Guo Meng was discharged from the hospital. In October, 100,000 tons of lithium carbonate and 50 tons of gold will be shipped from South America. In early December, Yao Yingsong married Wang Qi. There are many other small things that don't require his intervention, just sign. The most important thing is that Guo Meng is discharged from the hospital and marries Wang Qi. Yu would go over to pick her up, then bring her here, and treat her to a meal at home. When Wang Qi gets married, the villagers will be worried and will hold a wedding banquet in advance in the village, and then go to Yao Yingsong's hometown. Wang Qi's nonsense parents don't have to worry about it at all. Li Wanhe and Zhou Yufang will send him off in person when the time comes, as representatives of both families. It was impossible for Li Yuan and Zhou Ranran to go, and it was not convenient for Zhang Yuling to travel that far. Once married, Wang Qi will live in the capital for most of the future. Li Yuan will also try his best to keep a distance from Yao Yingsong and will never take the initiative to ask Yao Yingsong for anything. Li Yuan called Anna Shen and told her, "Help me watch for 2 hours and open a short Bitcoin order of $200 million every hour. If the price of Bitcoin exceeds $63,000, I will sell it as soon as possible. Go to $60,000. He has been in the game for more than a month and has invested nearly $30 billion without even realizing it. Through the chip situation, he almost tested the situation on Wall Street. The opponent still has a lot of chips, otherwise it would be impossible to protect the market for more than a month. They want to stabilize Bitcoin at the price of $60,000, and Li Yuan has been spending so long, and the other party knows it very well. However, Wall Street is not in a hurry. They want to see how long Li Yuan's funds can last. It's like both sides have opened a big net to catch fish. At present, Li Yuan's net opening is not large, and it can only make Wall Street slightly disgusted. They are waiting for Li Yuan to continue investing money, so they can find opportunities to eat up the funds. It's nothing more than raising Bitcoin to more than $120,000. In the current situation, they have money. For Western capital, money is never in short supply. They can print whatever they want. What is missing is a way to make money grow the fastest at the lowest cost. The money in other people's hands is definitely more fragrant than the money printed by yourself. Okay. Anna Shen agreed. After Li Yuan got up, she sat in Li Yuan's seat. She also graduated with a major in finance, so she can definitely understand numbers. It's just that Li Yuan's number is a bit big. She still remembered that when Zhang Yuling came to find her, he said lightly, if the child stays, he can take 50 billion with him. She was really moved. 50 billion can make her sell everything about herself, including her soul. But in the end, I thought of Xu Yanlin and couldn't bear to part with this last family relationship. Now that I have seen the funds behind Li Yuan, I realize that 50 billion is just the handling fee for Li Yuan's daily transactions. In the past month or so, his transaction fees should have been $100 million. According to this transaction frequency, Li Yuan only needs 5 or 6 years, and the transaction fees are more than 50 billion. No wonder he created the Nanjing Group and lost hundreds of billions, which had no impact on him. But if hundreds of billions could be distributed reasonably, the impact on him would be huge. Maybe in the future, Nanjing Group will be able to have more than 100,000 employees just by relying on its structural system in Qinghe County. In the past 2 years, the boss of Futukang claimed that he was giving food to the mainland. He was arrogant and belittled the mainland, but no one cared about him. Isn't it because he had jobs in his hands? Even if he makes such a principled mistake, he will be given a chance. Li Yuan is about to create a prosperous country in a small county town. This is extremely terrifying. If the model can be replicated, China's economic vitality will far exceed that of any other country in the world. Li Yuan never seemed to bother to compete with others, only competing with himself. Venus Motor has been scolded miserably. Many domestic car company bosses personally criticized Venus Motor at the press conference, but he didn't pay much attention to it. In domestic business wars, people generally like to use the method of pulling and stepping. While praising foreign countries, they are suppressing and trampling on their own people. When sending a mobile phone, first use foreign products as the standard, and then follow up with friends. When a car is launched, a foreign product is used as a standard to outshine its domestic counterparts. A typical example is to use Apple as the standard when releasing mobile phones, and win over domestic friends. When launching a car, take Tesla as the standard and overshadow its domestic counterparts. More than once, she heard Li Yuan scold those guys for treating Western standards as the standard all day long, causing a lot of Chinese people to be led astray. Why not mention Apple's signal, battery management crap? Why not mention Tesla's rough and shoddy craftsmanship and low-cost performance? Time passed by minute. Since he started helping Li Yuan, he found that Li Yuan was completely different from other capitals. He has been daring to sprint to the top instead of fighting with others at the same level. Even if he reaches the top, he still wants to use the chips in his hand to raise his position higher, instead of sitting back and enjoying the results. stopping to enjoy while waiting for others to catch up. In Li Yuan's eyes, mortals also want to reach heaven. Whether it is Li Yuan's family background or the path he has taken, there is really no difference between him and ordinary people. After a while, Li Yuan came to the study. Anna Shen wanted to get up, but Li Yuan held her shoulders down. "You go on, I'll watch for a while." While talking, Li Yuan leaned on her shoulder. She was serious about her trading, and Li Yuan said softly, "School is about to start. Bring your brother over here for class." "Well, I'll call Wen Suiwai tomorrow." She would not admit that Wen Suiwai was her stepmother. Even Shen Luo's brother, she didn't want to admit it. But now there is no conflict of interest between the two parties. Shen Tianfu called her many times in private, hoping that she could blow the pillow in front of Li Yuan and ask Li Yuan to send Shen Luo to him. But Anna Shen refused, and she would hang up the phone whenever Shen Tian mentioned it again. She knew what Shen Tianfu was thinking. Shen Tianfu's ambition had never disappeared. Be careful with Shen Tianfu. He has been trying to get Shen Luo out. He probably has the idea of setting up his own business. For the first time, Anna Shen directly betrayed her biological father. Li Yuan said with a smile, "It's good that he has this idea, so that he can work hard and our children can inherit his position in the future." "Ah. Let's work hard, Siking is a girl after all. I'm a little reluctant to give birth to another little boy." Well. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 369. Li Yuan is gradually building a foundation of trust with the people around him. For example, Anna Shen, who had been marginalized before, is slowly starting to do things. When I was with Anna Shen before, it was more like a certain relationship restricting me. Everyone needed it, and then we were together. There is no emotion or resonance at all, it is purely based on instinct to mediate in the middle. Only now did Li Yuan truly discover the benefits of Anna Shen. Some people are born to be beautiful. She is willing to show off and conquer others at will. It wasn't until you came home with Guo Meng that Li Yuan temporarily put down his work. Zhou Wan and Li Wan he prepared a lot of things in advance, and even sent gifts to Guo Meng's parents to express their gratitude. Even Zhang Yuling pulled Guo Meng and said a lot of thanks and made a lot of promises, just like a good best friend. After all, it was Li Yuan who did something sorry for others, and they all felt guilty. At the dinner table, Li Yuan toasted to Guo Meng's parents sincerely, once again expressing his gratitude for this matter. Guo Meng's parents must have nothing to say. This is Li Yuan. The whole family is accompanying him, so the face given to him is enough. Only Guo Meng acted a little coldly, as if he had been greatly traumatized in his heart. From arriving at 10 o'clock in the morning to leaving at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Guo Meng spent his time peacefully. After leaving, Zhou Wan sighed. How could she not see that Guo Meng was in a bad mood? "Xiao Yuan, your company will be kinder to Guo Meng from now on." Li Yuan said, "It's already very good. He is now the person with the second highest annual salary in the entire Qingtian group. Besides, didn't you just give gifts worth millions?" Before leaving, Zhou Wan stuffed a lot of things. Forgetting all kinds of gold jewelry, Li Yuan also took out more than half of the supplements that Li Yuan specially collected for them. Zhang Yuling also took out several million-level jewelry to give to Guo Meng. 6 to 7 million. Zhou Wan rolled her eyes and said, "Is your life worth that little money? It's obvious that I'm not satisfied yet. I need to compensate you some more." Li Yuan said helplessly, "What she is dissatisfied about is not the lack of gifts. What else can there be? Isn't there nothing serious about her now? Apart from this, How else can we compensate? Even my mother didn't notice that Guo Meng's resentful look could be compensated by money. It's almost as good as taking away the money. That night, while Li Yuan was staying at home, Guo Meng called. Many Christians asked us to reopen the subscription channel. Well, I don't want to be too passive in the company. What do you think? Now Guo Meng is the general manager of Qingtian Capital and can report directly to Li Yuan. Li Yuan thought about it for a while and said, that makes no sense. The current market is not good. If you go in, you will only be offered. Let's let the company study and come up with several fixed financial products, with fixed interest rates ranging from 3 points to 5 points within a few seconds. If someone is willing to buy it, let them buy it, and the purchase limit for a single product is 100,000. But we don't have relevant experience, so when money comes, there are ways to invest. All that money will be used to help new stock listings and related companies. I will compile a list for you. There are many companies that Qingtian Group has invested in, and there are many consumer industries that Li Yuan needs to support. It would also be good for him to promote these companies to go public. There is no need to compete with the old players in the market, just be a good new company. Qingtian Capital, that is, through auxiliary operations, can absorb billions and tens of billions of funds to maintain operations, and we will wait until the interest rate hike is over. Those big domestic capitals haven't suffered yet. Now it's just that their funds are limited, and nominally they don't lose much. But their capital costs will become larger and larger until the costs crush them and they will become desperate. Just like when the US dollar raises interest rates, it will not give in until it can no longer increase interest rates. Li Yuan then took a look at the accounts of Qingtian Group. There were still hundreds of billions in the accounts that had no place to spend. I really don't understand how some companies owe 1.9 trillion. Owing money is also a skill. So far, Li Yuan has paid off all the money he owed. The Qingtian Capital stocks that were originally pledged to the 5 major banks were realized in nearly 900 billion, and the principal of 180 billion plus several billion in interest was repaid. After that, the money repaid the 300 billion previously owed, as well as the more than 200 billion borrowed by Qingtian Group. There was also a gambling agreement with Tang Jianjun, transferring a large amount of chips to them. In the end, 80% of the profit exceeding the principal amount was also his, which added up to more than 300 billion. Even if Bixin Mall is losing money, even if the Qinghua project has spent more than 10 billion, even if Kixing Motors has burned nearly 30 billion, even if it has been continuously supporting and adding new projects in the past 2 years, Qingtian there are still 700 billion in the group's account. These are all the nominal assets of Li Yuan. Bixin Mall loses about 20 billion every year, almost all of which is lost in personnel wages. Qinghua spent 10 billion on that project, which is just the beginning. More than 10 billion will be spent next year. The most important point is that even if it succeeds, you will still lose money if you produce the product. Compared with UV lithography machines, this model of vigorously flying bricks has a very low yield rate. The same 10,000 wafers are used. If the light source is controlled by an UV lithography machine, the yield rate can reach 85%. After segmentation, hundreds of thousands of qualified high-precision process chips can be produced. If people want 5 nanometers, it is 5 nanometers. It is normal to sell a chip for 5,800 yuan, and overall it can make money. But it's different here. It's the same 10,000 wafers. After the final light source is screened, no more than 5% can reach the level of extreme ultraviolet light. In addition, the yield rate is not high, and only a few thousand wafers may be produced in the end. 5 nanometers chips, tens of thousands of 7 nanometers chips, tens of thousands of 12 nanometers chips, tens of thousands of 14 nanometers chips. If the process exceeds 14 nanometers, you will lose money if you use this kind of equipment, because there are too many competing products on the market, and they are basically all at ridiculous prices. The price of a 28 nanometers chip may be only 30 or 50 yuan, which is not enough for the electricity bill, let alone let's talk about operation and maintenance costs. As for 48 nanometers, 96 nanometers, and 128 nanometers, the wholesale price is only a dozen yuan each. It is suitable for various elderly phones, learning machines, children's phones and watches. The low-end market feeds a lot of people, and it is impossible for Li Yuan to dump it, so he can only bear the loss on himself. The price-performance ratio is definitely not good, but if you have it, you don't have to worry about it. Others will be willing to sell it to you. Based on the calculation of 800 yuan for a 5 nanometers chip, the cost of using bent-based electronics may only be 300 yuan, and for them, the cost may be 2000 yuan. It's just for Hua's use. People can afford it. Li Yuan's own glory doesn't have enough brand power, so he can't even think about using it for the time being. That thing is really expensive, and it's not very meaningful. Just pick up some 14 nanometers or 28 nanometers ones and use them. Kixing Motors may be able to use it. It's expensive, so the cost can be spread evenly. Once ASML chooses to lift the ban on exporting high-end lithography machines to China, this project will have no meaning. 5 nanometers is already the limit that can be controlled at present, and the technology is unlikely to be upgraded in the future, and can only be increased by other means, such as arrangement and design. Whether it is 4 nanometers or 3 nanometers, there is almost no significant increase in performance. There are many future directions, such as quantum lithography machines. But that requires changing the carrier. The current chip carrier is a silicon wafer. Other carriers have not yet been explored. It may need to be synthesized, or it may be some natural element that has not been thoroughly studied. Anyway, it is not a project that can be completed recently. The development of science and technology has reached a bottleneck, which is also the beginning of problems in the global economy. Without new growth points, everyone can only roll around crazily in the original track, rolling back and forth. Not only will they not make money, but a large number of companies will die. Only by increasing can the whole world make money. The stock game, a large number of people will surely die. Similarly, this is also the fundamental reason why China and the United States are betting on new energy vehicles. Although this track is old, it still has great potential. In the stock market game, mosquito legs are also meat. What Li Yuan is currently doing is to seek increments in the existing stock so that funds can circulate quickly, which will at least be better than others. Zhang Yuling coaxed Li Jingchen, came to the study, and accompanied Li Yuan to look at the new projects of Qingtian Group for a while. After a while, she said, "Am I too lazy? I haven't worked for many years. Do you want me to find a job too?" "No way, I think you are the most tired in the past few years. At least I would rather go to work than deal with family relations. It's hard to imagine how you can do such trivial things well." Zhang Yuling laughed. "Actually, it's very simple. Just be careful and pay attention to every detail. I'm different from you. You don't want to waste energy on small things. You use your energy to do other things and gain something. It will be bigger. When spending time with your family, you cannot consider the benefits." Perhaps Zhou Wan would sometimes nag a few words about something being too expensive, or she might have seen some chicken soup from somewhere and talk about how to take care of the child. If the child behaves abnormally, is he lacking this or that? Already, everyone has negative emotions, and Zhang Yuling also has them. But she couldn't cause trouble to Li Yuan, so she would restrain everything. She only knows that everyone in the family is good to her, so she must sacrifice some emotions to resonate with her psychological conflicts. Otherwise, Zhang Yuling could have argued with Zhou Wan about those poisonous chicken soup issues as a graduate student. But the cost of arguing is that others are uncomfortable and it does no good to you. She usually puts down her emotions, talks to Jo Wan about these issues, and uses the gentlest means to persuade the other party. Li Yuan said, "Am I particularly vulgar? There is no such thing as making money. It's not vulgar at all. Life should have a goal, but the closer the goal is to me, the happier I will be. Then, let's go take some wedding photos, okay? I happen to have some free time recently, so let's have some fun and relax." End of chapter. They posted it upside down, and I'm actually not satisfied with it. Author, Lao He. Chapter 370. Taking photos is actually not difficult. Because it was decided on a temporary basis, the venue was chosen arbitrarily, and the focus was on surprise. Even though there were many spies near the village, they would change places as soon as they fired a shot. He had already finished shooting before others could report the information. What I fear most is the kind of thing that is determined to be done several days in advance, and on a fixed occasion. Zhang Yuling has a lot of nice clothes, but rarely wears them at home. When Li Yuan said this, she immediately became interested. As for where to go, it doesn't matter. This season is just right, you can play anywhere. So, the next day, the two took their children out. They had many cars, so they first asked the bodyguard to drive Li Yuan's car to Zhangzhou, and then the two of them sat in another car and left the village. Zhang Yuling cherishes every opportunity to go out, because the further back he goes, the fewer such opportunities become. She doesn't have many restrictions. Even if someone wants to target Li Yuan, they are unlikely to attack her. That would be meaningless and would only completely anger Li Yuan. It is unlikely that Li Yuan will leave the village. After such a long time, the layout around the village has been completed, and basically no chance will be given to others. Being able to go out and take photos with Li Yuan alone is something that others may not have the opportunity to do. After playing for 3 whole days, Zhang Yuling was still a little unhappy, but they had to go back. Because there was a call from home just now, and an old man in the village left. He is also the third master with the highest seniority in the village. Li Yuan seldom communicated with the third grandpa because of the big gap in seniority. Usually it was Li Wanhe or Grandpa Li Yuan who went there. The departure of the third master in his previous life meant that the ties between the village and the village were officially untied. But now, what needs to be solved has long been solved. The remaining interests that have not been untied have been completely tied together. They will never betray the interests given by Li Yuan. Everyone is self-aware that their value lies in being bound to Li Yuan, not themselves. Give them hundreds of millions or billions to betray Li Yuan. Not worth it at all. They can earn this money in just a few years. Give tens of billions or even hundreds of billions. Then there must be a life flower. Something happened to Li Yuan, how could they get the money? After Li Yuan came back, he first kowtowed to the third master, and then was called aside by He Ji Unchuan. He Ji Unchuan was the great-nephew of the third great-grandfather, and he was by his side during the last moments of his life. He Ji Unchuan's face was very calm. The third master was already 100 years old. There was nothing sad about leaving at this age. Moreover, in the past 2 years, the third master has enjoyed all the blessings he has never experienced in his life, and he has no regrets in his heart. Yesterday, my master felt that it was almost time, and asked someone to inquire about you. Knowing that you were not here, he didn't ask me to tell you. Li Yuan nodded. He Ji Unchuan continued, my grandfather said before he left that although many outsiders came to the village, during the holidays, he felt the same atmosphere as more than 10 years ago. It's not that he didn't know these years, but he was powerless and could only watch the love in the village slowly fade away. Well, if there is no benefit to this thing of love, it will be difficult to maintain it forever. Yes, I didn't understand it before, but I figured it out before I left. The southern clans are bound by interests, so they can be twisted into a rope, but our side does not have enough appeal, and the system formed back then was relatively loose and becomes vulnerable as times change. Fortunately, I have you. Before I leave, let me give you his crutch. The so-called crutch is just a wooden stick that has been with the old man for decades. It might be worth a little money, but not more than 300. The value is the material. Li Yuan was silent for a while and asked, have you notified Ho Wenbin and the others? This, not yet. After all, they haven't officially moved in yet, and they are not familiar with the master. Let me inform you and ask them to put down what they are doing and come here. Good. After Li Yuan returned, he had a conversation with several elders. Gao Ming came over in a hurry and left in a hurry, because he had to handle everything that Li Yuan was personally present, and others were worried. I definitely have to eat at noon today. Zhou Wan and the others can serve as chefs, but the ingredients need to be prepared skillfully. Basically, he is in charge of the entire village's logistics, not only the large supermarket at the entrance of the village, but also several vegetable greenhouses and 5 or 6 small farms 1,000 meters behind the village. Half an hour later, Ho Wenbin and others began to arrive one after another. Some of them are in Qinghe County, and some are a little further away. Even if you buy a ticket now, you may not be able to make it there at noon. Those who came first went to kowtow to the third master, and then went to help prepare lunch according to Li Yuan's arrangement. I don't know how to cook, but I always wash the dishes and clear the table. Zhou Ran also came over and stayed for a while. When he saw the crutch in Li Yuan's hand, he went back to take care of the child. Li Wanhe came to Li Yuan and asked, Xiao Yuan, do you want to inform those people in the village before? You can avoid it for a while. Li Wanhe was also worried that something might happen to Li Yuan, mainly because it was a fellow villager after all, and it would be better to inform him that the village was being demoted. But Li Yuan shook his head and said, there is no need to notify, so as not to make a mess later. They chose to leave at the beginning and never thought about leaving any memories in the village. Li Yuan was too aware of the situation in the village in his previous life. Even Zhou Yifang had a normal relationship with his family. Unlike now, if anything happens at home, I can just call and come without any complaints. Although those people in the village still have nothing to say or even come to visit, they actually value Li Yuan's identity, otherwise who would care about the favor of a hometown village when they have time? Well, Li Wanhe stopped mentioning this. He had nothing to say about Li Yuan. Even though his character seemed a little unkind and he went his own way, he could still find reasons. The work he does not allow him to be too emotional, nor does he allow him to be too hesitant in doing things. These words were all told to them by Zhang Yuling. Zhang Yuling said that there should be no deviation in financial games, and only by getting rid of miscellaneous personalities can we avoid making mistakes. He also said that Li Yuan was already good enough. If it were anyone else, no one in his family would even think of speaking loudly in front of him. If anyone made decisions for him and affected him, it would be easy to get angry on the spot. Li Wanhe believed this, and Li Yuan never got angry with the people around him. According to Zhang Yuling, Li Yuan is already impeccable. He has been at home this year, and he can feel the warmth in Li Yuan's mood slowly coming back, but today, maybe this matter is more important to him. We had a simple meal at noon, and then we started setting up the venue and preparing for the burial ceremony. At around 12 o'clock at night, Li Yuan came back from the third master's place, and then went into the study. Zhang Yuling came over and told him to rest, but he didn't go. On the screen in front of him, he was planning the entire village. His brilliance can be regarded as brilliance, but overall it is still a bit lacking. Even if this generation catches up, it won't be enough. Others have accumulated it over several generations, coupled with unlucky luck. He has luck, but what he lacks is accumulation. And the most important thing is to have a backup plan. The so-called backhand is the opportunity to recover even if you encounter a major blow. Originally, he didn't want to consider it so early, after all, the second generation was still young. But today he suddenly realized that he might die suddenly and suddenly. Whether it was an attack or a sudden illness. I have been thinking about it since the day, and at night I just put my thoughts into practice. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I felt almost done, so I went to rest. After sleeping for about 6 hours, he got up and came to the third master's house again. There were people keeping vigil here last night, keeping watch, and it was normal for it to turn into a card game. Only He Jianchuan did not participate. He helped pour water and refilled the incense and candles over and over. The next day, all the people from the 13 Taibao came. They were all of the younger generation. People of Ho Zhenqiu's level were definitely not allowed to come because they had no connection with the village. Wang Qi is also back. Buried on the third day. There is one more grave in the back mountain. Half a month later, the atmosphere of the third master's death disappeared. He Jianchuan inherited a villa and was the third family in the village besides Li Yuan and Zhou Ranran to own more than one villa. In early December, the village began to prepare for Wang Qi's marriage. Yao Yingsong's parents came over and drank with Li Wanhe and Zhou Yufang for 3 days in a row. They decided on a date and gave them a betrothal gift and 3 gold coins. December 24th, Changjin Lake Victory Day. Good luck and a good time to get married. Yao Yingsong rushed over at 10 o'clock in the morning. At Wang Qi's villa, he took his family and dozens of guests to a meal and gave them gifts. The commotion continued late into the night. Yao Yingsong wanted to go to bed because he had to drive 300 kilometers tomorrow to take Wang Qi home. It's a pity that Ho Wenbin and the others wouldn't let him. Li Yuan had returned early and didn't even plan to get up the next morning to deliver it. I just didn't expect that at 6 o'clock in the morning, the weather was extremely cold, and the wedding car procession stopped specifically in front of Li Yuan's house. Li Yuan was woken up by Zhang Yuling. He went downstairs, glanced at Yao Yingsong and Wang Qi, and said, "You don't know that the wedding car can't stop in the middle? This means that the relationship is going smoothly. What's wrong with you stopping?" Yao Yingsong said with a smile, "I came here specifically to tell the boss that I want to take Kikai home." "Well, okay, I'll rest assured if I leave Xiao Qi to you." Li Yuan walked over and helped him straighten his tie. At the same time, he said, "There will still be a long time in the future." "Well, listen to the boss." Yao Yingsong shouldn't have called him boss. I don't know if he didn't get used to it or if he did it on purpose. Li Yuan smiled and sent the two to the car again, and then waved goodbye to the motorcade. He didn't turn around until the car's tail lights disappeared into the darkness. Zhang Yuling whispered, "He came here today to express his position." Although I'm not very familiar with him, I feel that he is a very calm person. It's a pity that he lacks some background. Although he is not bad at his age, it is really hard to say about his future. Li Yuan put his arms around Zhang Yuling's shoulders and said, "Daughter-in-law, times have changed. They have changed quietly since the past few years. He has a lot of room to play. If he doesn't have one, then make one for him." What has it become? It turns into a person who eats people without having to cover up. It's even more naked. So you are actually doing what my grandpa said. Hold head high. At this point, there is nothing that cannot be admitted. When he arrived in the bedroom, Zhang Yuling thought for a while on the bed and said, "Does Qingtian Group have an education support project in remote mountainous areas?" "Yes, yes. The main purpose is to hire some teachers to integrate educational resources in remote areas and provide students with some life support. How about I run this project?" "Well, I'm not worried. It's quite a hassle." "It's okay, it's settled. Anyway, Jing Cheng will be old next year, so my parents can take care of it, and I'll find something to do for myself. As for Jiangshu going to kindergarten, I'll leave it to you. Li Yuan. Zhang Yuling doesn't want to take Jiangshu with him. 3-year-old Jiangshu is already very scary. He has quite a lot of energy and basically needs an adult to accompany him, and he has to adapt to his biological clock. When he was tired from all the hard work, he fell asleep. Adults don't have that high quality of sleep. That is to say, there are many people in the family, but only Zhang Yuling can be tortured by Jiangshu. Don't you find Jiangshu's whimsical ideas interesting? What fantastic idea! I just think he's been so annoyed lately. Maybe it's because Li Yuan spends more time at home this year, and Li Yuan is very patient with children. No matter what Jiangshu talks to him, he can keep chatting with him. Then, Jiangshu changed. At just over 3 years old, I can hold people for a long time and make all kinds of weird remarks. Li Yuan smiled and said, "Forget it, you can't enjoy this blessing. It's my turn to enjoy it." As soon as Li Yuan finished speaking, Jiangshu woke up and ran in from outside. Because Li Jingcheng was still young, Jiangshu always slept with his grandparents. But he is very attached to Li Yuan now. "Dad, Dad, are you rich?" He ran over on his calves. After all, he was at the age of kindergarten. His speech was very clear and his actions were very neat. He asked while lying on the bedside. Li Yuan hugged him to the bed and said, "I don't have any money yet, but I will definitely have it in the afternoon." Jiangshu looked unbelieving, "But when you were eating my snacks yesterday, you said you would have money this morning." "You remembered wrongly. I was talking about today, and I didn't specify whether it was morning or afternoon. Jiangshu, the most important thing between father and son is trust. You must fully and unconditionally trust Dad on any occasion." Jiangshu rolled his eyes. "Then if someone says you ate shit, will I believe that you ate shit?" Li Yuan, this. "Jiangshu, isn't that what you said? I should believe you unconditionally on any occasion. There is a problem with your assumption. When others say that I eat shit, if you fully believe me, you should believe that I will not eat shit. But no matter what snacks I buy, you will eat them in one bite, just give me a few." Jiangshu pinched the belly of his little finger with his thumb to describe the snacks left after being eaten by Li Yuan. "Li Yuan, but that's what we agreed. After buying the snacks, let Dad take a bite. Do you want to eat any snack?" "Yes, Dad's mouth is just a little too big. After all, I am an adult, so I must eat more than a child." "In other words, you like snacks very much." "Of course, I like it so much. I've never eaten it before." "Jiangshu, but yesterday you pointed at dog poop and said it looked like ham sausage. If you have never eaten snacks before and you love snacks so much, I believe you must have eaten papa as a snack when you didn't have snacks." Li Yuan. Zhang Yuling had covered his head with a quilt. She just had enough. End of chapter.